Hi, I'm Carlin Borisenko. In early 2020, I was the knitting Democrat who accidentally went viral on the internet for going to a Trump rally and then left the party. I became the conservative darling, was on all the shows, traveled around the country, and then realized that conservatives were no better than Democrats. If there's one thing that I've learned, it's that both political tribes are two sides of the same coin. But it wasn't all bad. On my journey, I became obsessed with understanding the woke ideology and the culture war. I broke the story of the city of Seattle doing segregated training with its employees.
How bad has this stuff become? The city of Seattle has now put out, I'm not kidding you, this is according to Dr. Carolyn Borisenko, who's an organizational psychologist. The city of Seattle asked its white employees to voluntarily spend a day off in a training about their internalized racial superiority.
I broke the story that led to the first ever federal lawsuit against critical race theory in the schools. I broke the Coke Be Less White story, one of the biggest anti-woke stories of all time. It got over 30 million views. Coca-Cola's corporate headquarters even had to change their outgoing voicemail.
Throughout the past few days, you may have seen inaccurate reporting on the content of our recently launched diversity, equity, and inclusion training program.
I exposed the schools in Burlington, Vermont for grooming middle school children live on the internet. They called me an unwoke cult leader for that. And the Vermont Human Rights Commission slandered me publicly as being a hate channel. I even got called a hero in Breitbart for exposing that the Washington Post was writing a hit piece on Christopher Rufo. I have broken story after story after story about what's going on in the public schools, from Cambridge, Massachusetts, to autistic sex education, to the Department of Education in Michigan, literally training teachers all over the state how to groom children. I wrote a book called Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life. I host a podcast all about fighting back, and I'm downloading all of my knowledge to you on my Substack, carlin.substack.com. The world is a crazy place. We are literally surrounded by cults on all sides. On this show, we're going to do a deep dive into all aspects of the culture war, and I will show you the dark, dystopian underbellies on both sides. Here are the commitments I'll make to you. I will always tell you the truth. I will always bring you receipts. And if you stick with me, I promise you will see the world differently. Welcome to the cult. Please mount that like button for me and subscribe if you feel so inclined. Well, hey, everyone. Happy Friday. We did it. We made it through another week. And now it is time for Happy Hour. Happy Hour is our traditional Friday stream where we do basically what we do every day on this channel now, which is we watch a woke training, except on Fridays. It's better because we do it with beer. And if you're not drinking beer, you know, whatever you are drinking, whether that be wine or like maybe a spritzer of some sort, or like maybe something with vodka in it and maybe olives, or maybe just tea, maybe water, whatever you got going on, let us know what you are drinking in the chat. I will let you guys vote on which of these 4 beers that I have sitting here that I will be drinking first when we get it started. That's right, Great One. Happy Hour is happier than other streams we do because we have alcohol to guide us into the weekend. Well, guys, I'm actually rather excited to watch this presentation today. And you know what? We are going back to my old friend, one of my former internet boyfriends. I don't know if he ever knew he was my internet boyfriend, but he was for like a week and a half. We are going back to Daddy Henry. Who remembers Daddy Henry? Daddy Henry Giroux. Now, I hadn't had Henry on my list to go back to. I kind of feel like once you break off an internet relationship, you just got to kind of move on. I don't like going backwards. I like going forwards. So I actually hadn't planned to watch Daddy Henry. You know, I'm sure we could have gotten back to him at some time. Yep, Reagan remembers. Yep, good times. One of the reasons we like Daddy Henry is because Henry is like 80 years old, and Henry kind of seems to be all out of F's to give, which means he says the quiet part out loud a lot. And that's very useful for us when we're looking for clips that reveal what these people really think. Yes. Henry Giroux. But there is a very special reason that I am coming back to Daddy Henry. And that is because so for those who don't know, Henry Giroux is basically the protege of Paulo Freire. Henry Giroux is literally the chaired professor for like the Paulo Freire Professorship of Critical Studies or something at like McMaster University. So this is not just a casual acquaintance. Like Henry Giroux bears the name of Paulo Freire. Henry Giroux is the person that is essentially responsible for schools in the United States embracing critical pedagogy. So he's not an insignificant figure. We might make fun of Daddy, yes, Daddy Henry, the love child of Papa Freire. Yes, indeed. We might have levity around the situation, but Henry Giroux is actually a significant figure. Okay, he's not a slacker. And I mean, I've always liked watching Henry. It wasn't there was no fallout in the internet relationship. It was just like one of those things where, I got bored, he got bored, we moved on, like whatever. But then this week, I was assured by the James Lindsay stands that have been tweeting at me and messaging me and commenting, how dare you criticize the god Lindsay. I was assured this week by the James Lindsay stans that because James Lindsay has basically been covering Henry Giroux, and James Lindsay's book covers are actually mimicked after Henry Giroux's book covers, which is an amazing troll on the part of James. I have to say that's very, very funny. Like, I got to give him credit for that one. But I was assured by James Lindsay's fans that because James Lindsay is obsessed with Henry Giroux, that means that James Lindsay has adequately covered abolish the family and social reproduction theory because Lindsay has said he's already covered the problem of reproduction through his work on Freire and the Marxification of education, and through the protege, the love child of Papa Freire, Daddy Henry Giroux. Not even James Lindsay has sat through a Henry Giroux actual presentation. Well, maybe he has, Rottweiler. Maybe he has. We don't know that. We don't know what James Lindsay watches at night when he is, just skulking about the internet, tweeting and, doing whatever. We don't know. Maybe he has. I don't know. But because I was assured by the Lindsay stands this week that Henry Giroux is apparently the epicenter of all that anyone needs to know about abolish the family and the attacks on parental rights and the problem of reproduction, which really should be called social reproduction theory, but whatever. I thought that maybe we would just tiptoe our way back into Daddy Henry's world and watch a presentation that Daddy Henry did relatively recently at Morgan State University. And if that sounds like it's a taxpayer-funded institution, it's because it is. I believe it's in Maryland. Anyway, this professor of education studies at Morgan State University was kind enough to put up on his YouTube channel this presentation by Henry. Here's Henry. We can see him down in the corner. He's looking very dapper. You would never know that Henry is like over 80. Looking good for his age, I have to say. And so we are going to be watching Henry Giroux on critical pedagogy in the crisis of democracy in an age of tyranny. I think another problem with Lindsay's approach is that the references are obscure enough so he and the people who just mimic him are essentially dismissed as conspiracy theorists. Well, I think that they might be able to like quell some of the conspiracy theory accusations if they were actually showing real world presentations like on video. Maybe that's just Rottweiler. What do you think about that? What if James Lindsay, instead of just citing obscure academic papers, every once in a while showed his audience video of these people talking in the real world on the taxpayer dime? Would that maybe help to sway some of these conspiracy theorist accusations? I'm just saying. Here is the description of the presentation. In our current historical moment marked by the resurfacing of past horrors like domestic fascism and racial cleansing, the role of educators becomes critically pivotal. Dr. Henry Giroux's recent speech at Morgan State University, though conveyed virtually, echoed with a profound urgency and insight. He highlighted the encroaching shadows of authoritarianism in education, a threat that demands immediate and concerted action from educators worldwide. This essay seeks to unpack Dr. Giroux's key ideas and positions them as a clarion call for a transformative educational response. Now, this video was uploaded to YouTube on November 19, 2023, but let me just see, like, it's got a date. The video has a date in it. Oh, 11/16/2023. So this was on November 16th of last year. So this was 4 months ago, okay? So this is really, 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 really recent Henry Giroux. And if the James Lindsay stands are correct, and all that James Lindsay needs to do to cover abolish the family and attacks on parental rights and unpacking the quote unquote problem of reproduction, which he's citing Fieri with, even though there are many other people talking about it that weren't Fieri. If all that James Lindsay needs to do to adequately cover this is to cover Henry Giroux and Paulo Fieri, because this talk was only like 4 months ago, I think we would probably hear that in this talk, right? Does that make sense to everyone? Am I making things up? If this was all that was required to help parents understand the attacks on parental rights, Henry's definitely going to cover it in this talk, right? This is brand new, hot off the presses. Only 22 people have watched it. We'll find out. We'll find out if that is an adequate amount of explanation for what this is that will help real people in the real world. And we can cross our fingers and hope that yes, Daddy Henry Giroux is the only thing that we need to talk about when we're covering the quote unquote problem of reproduction. So that is what we're doing today on Happy Hour, guys. I hope you're here for it. Please do mount that like button if you would be so kind. We do Happy Hour every Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. I also stream Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. on YouTube, on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, and on Rumble. And on Saturdays, we do Socialism Saturday at 6 p.m. So it's a little bit later because it's my Saturday too, and I have other stuff to do, all right? But that's what we're doing today. I hope you guys are here for it. A couple things before we get started. Now, number one, as always, please make sure you are subscribed to my Substack. That is Carlin, Karlyn.substack.com. That is, again, Carlin, Karlyn.substack.com. Substack is my main content hub on the internet, is where all my best content is, where you can find a library of video clips and all sorts of other things as well. And if you missed the Fat Positivity supporter spy stream yesterday, it was lit. And I've got some clips coming from that either tonight or maybe tomorrow, depending on if I spend time with my husband tonight or not. I'm hoping to spend time with my husband tonight, so you guys might just have to wait until tomorrow. It's just the way it goes, okay? I need to have a life too. And so that was really great. We did that this week. We did 2 spy streams this week. Got a new article in the Woke 101 series. Got a new episode of the Actively Unwoke podcast up. Got some more stuff coming up tomorrow. Fingers crossed, hopefully, if I can get it together. And so make sure you are subscribed you can always subscribe for free, of course, and get email updates whenever I post new things. But if you want to support the work I'm doing and keep me in business and get access to the supporter-only spy streams, and you'll also get access to Bitchcraft. We're doing a Bitchcraft tomorrow at 3 p.m. before Socialism Saturday. Go ahead and sign up for $8 a month or $80 a year. Your funding does allow me to spend all my time watching woke trainings and picking apart woke trainings and teaching people about woke trainings and analyzing woke trainings and going undercover at woke events and doing investigative journalism to show you guys what's really going on. I show you things that no one else on the internet is showing you. And I am lucky enough to be completely funded by you guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you for allowing me to do what I do. I can't do it without you. And if you want to join my supporter community today, again, $8 a month, $80 a year. I really do appreciate it, guys. Head over to the Substack and get signed up. Another way you can support the work I'm doing is by heading over to unwokeart.com. Links are in the description below. This is my merchandise store. And you still got a little bit more time to get 25% off a couple of designs that I have up right now. The latest design I have added to the store is celebrating the fact that I got added to a list in New Hampshire of radical anti-democracy extremists. And apparently I'm such a radical anti-democracy extremist that I was added not once but twice. So I guess I got a bonus ad. Now, of course, we do know that when socialists say the word democracy, what they really mean is socialism, because socialists believe that socialism is the only true form of democracy. And so, really, we could interpret this inclusion on the list as being a radical anti socialist extremist. And so, I'm cool with that, man. I'm cool. I decided to make this design in the Unwoke Art Store. So not only can I advertise that I am indeed a two-time radical anti-democracy extremist, according to Granite State Progress and Zandra in New Hampshire, you can also advertise your radical anti-democracy extremist as well. Of course, it comes in t-shirts, hoodies, long sleeve shirts, tank tops, tumbler, mug, bag, sticker, all that good stuff. You can get that for 25% off for the next couple days. The discount is automatically taken at checkout. And I'm bringing it back just for a short time because, again, Daddy James Lindsay was tweeting the grand epiphany that Marxists always lie on his Twitter account. And people send that tweet to me because, of course, I'm blocked from his Twitter account. I can't see it, but people still send me stuff all the flipping time. And I thought it was very stunning and brave for James to finally catch up with me on this one again, because I made the Socialists Always Lie shirt design a while ago, and I decided to bring it back and put it on sale. So just in case you haven't gotten the iconic, the original Socialists Always Lie design, let me tell you, man, I wear this shirt, and I do live in New Hampshire, so we have a friendly population to this sort of messaging. But I'll like wear this shirt out in public, and it's one of the things where, like, I'll be, if I have to go to the mall or something for some reason, which I never actually go to the mall unless I actually have to get something at, like, there has to be a really good reason for me to go to the mall. But if I do go to the mall, then I'm going to be wearing one of my Unwoke shirts, and I like to wear this one out because let me tell you what happens when you wear this shirt in like a crowded place. It's like you're walking through the crowded place and people will look at your shirt, and then they will lock eyes with you and they'll just go like this. You get a knowing nod. You're like, yeah. Maybe they do one of those. And it's just really cool because you learn that you are not alone in the world. You learn that other people see the world the way you do. It is a refreshing white pill to be wearing this shirt out in public and then to just be walking by some random stranger and they look at you and they go, mm-hmm. They do that. They do that. So you can get that design also at the Unwoke Art Store right now for 25% off, and lots of other cool designs as well. And of course, all your purchases. This is the one I'm wearing right now. Literally wearing my 1984 shirt right now because I love this shirt. I think it looks so cool. Anyway, all purchases in the Unwoke Art Store do go to support the work I'm doing, and you get cool swag. And all my stuff looks cool, and it's really good quality. It's jersey. It's nice. It's lots of stuff. Anyway, head over there if you need some swag, and I really do appreciate it. One last thing before we get started. Now, you guys know that I never announce streams in advance, mostly because I don't actually usually bring on a lot of guests because I'm really like into this whole deep diving socialist thing right now, and I'm just like, and guests are usually a pain in the ass, and like I don't like scheduling it, and I don't like I just don't like it, okay? But every once in a while I do find things that I do find ideas that I want to explore, and I find people that I actually want to talk to. And I was dragged kicking and screaming into the land of Adam Green not too long ago. Now, I had heard about Adam Green before, and I kind of like, I never really looked into him or what he was talking about or any of that stuff. But then I got dragged kicking and screaming into the world of Adam Green not too long ago. And I don't know that I'm like fully 100% on board with his ideas, but what I do like about him is that I think his ideas are worth considering. I like the way he does research. And the thing of it is like I can recognize I'm obsessed with the thing that I'm investigating. I'm obsessed with doing deep dives into the far left, okay? Like, I think that's pretty clear to anyone who watches my content for even like the shortest little time. I'm obsessed with this stuff. I go into worlds and lands that most people don't even bother to go into, that most people don't even know about. I can recognize the same type of obsession in other people, and I think that's cool. I think it's interesting to talk to people who are deep diving into these worlds and have interpretations of this stuff that other people haven't thought of before. I think it's interesting. Now, the reason that I'm telling you guys about this is because I know that okay, I don't know this for sure, but I'm pretty sure that most of you are not familiar with Adam Green, or maybe you've heard of him in passing but didn't go. Is that right? Do people know who this is, or is this someone that people are not familiar with? The reason I say that is this. Adam Green has an encyclopedic knowledge of what he's talking about in exactly the same way that I have a savant like knowledge of all things real world socialist activist. And I think it would be helpful to people if you're going to come to this interview and you want to ask questions. I think it would be helpful to people to go and watch some of his other videos so that you can familiarize yourself with his ideas. Okay. So it looks like most of you haven't heard of him. Reagan hasn't heard of him. Maldi hasn't heard of him. Teresa, Bot, Gray One, Judy, Mary, Casimir, sorry. Uh, does look a little bit like Jesus. I think he looks like a Viking, which is also part of the reason I want to interview him, because like he looks like a Viking. I mean, that's just like a good way to spend time. Why not? Beth has heard of him a couple years ago. James Jones, not familiar. Rottweiler, you know everything. Come on. Jan has. Anyway, the reason I bring this up is in this video, I have put a link to a playlist that you can find on his Odyssey channel, which should tell you how controversial his ideas are, by the way. I don't want to hear any whining and complaining because you don't like this, okay? If you start to dig into this and you don't agree with him, you don't have to come to the interview. No one is forcing you to consider an idea, but I'm just saying that it might benefit you to watch some of the things in this playlist. There are shorter videos in this playlist, there are longer videos in this playlist, but it might help everyone out and make it easier for him to explain his ideas to us if you guys became familiar with what he was doing. If you're so inclined. If you're not inclined, that's fine too. But when I started, like, again, getting dragged kicking and screaming into his world, it was a little overwhelming for me is all I'm saying. And I've watched him on several shows now, and he kind of he does what I do when I'm trying to overwhelm people with like the amount of information that I know about like socialist activists in the United States, where I go and did it and this like, and I go like, or I'll do something like capitalism created slavery because of reason X, Y, B, and Z, and that created the gender binary and the patriarchy and upheld the nuclear family. Like he goes into these big long explanations that he knows because he has an encyclopedic knowledge of this stuff, but it's not always clear to people who don't have some familiarity. And so I'm just saying it would help everything out if you guys would do some homework for me. And if you're not interested in the topic, you don't have to, but I wanted to put that out there to be responsible, because I do actually want to do like, he does a lot of debates, and I don't want this to be about a debate with him. I don't care about debating him. Okay. Like, what I want this to be is like what we do with the socialists, which is we listen to his perspective, we ask him questions about his perspective, and it is what it is. You don't have to agree. It is not tomorrow, but it's on Wednesday. So I'm giving you guys some time because I'm giving you homework, okay? So you've got like, what, 5 days to do homework? And again, you don't have to, but I thought it would be helpful. Yes, discussion is always superior to debate. Debate solves nothing. Debate is just about gotcha moments and bullshit, and I'm just not interested in that. But I am interested in having discussions about original ideas, and so we will be doing that with Adam Green on Wednesday, and now you guys can either do homework or not, and I'll leave it up to you from there. All right, that's all I had to say about that. Let's see. Well, I'm not expecting Adam Green to talk about abolish the family. I'm expecting Adam Green to talk about the origins of Christianity, okay? This is not an abolish the family discussion. I mean though you could say it's like a discussion about like the original cult, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, that is all I have, guys. And of course, we have to do the beer before I get started. One more order of business, and it's possibly the most important order of business because it involves me drinking beer. Hang on. So we do have a tradition on happy hour where I go to the craft beer store and I get 4 beers. And I don't drink all these beers on stream because that's a lot, but I do tell you about them. And then I put a poll in the chat, and you guys get to decide which beer I drink first. And I'm very excited about the beer selection today because there are like 3 dark beers and 1 fruity beer. And usually my ratio of fruity beer to dark beer is much more veered towards the fruity beer. But I'm excited for some stouts today, maybe. The first one I have is going to be the fruity beer, though, and I had to get this one because of the can. Because you guys know I'm a sucker for a good beer can. And this is from Kettlehead Brewing Company, which I think is in New Hampshire. Is it in New Hampshire? Where is it? Franklin, New Hampshire. I thought so. This is from Kettlehead Brewing Company. This is called Swirl. And this is a black raspberry and vanilla Berliner Weiss. And it's also got graham crackers and coconut. So raspberry, vanilla, Weiss, which a Weiss is going to be like a lighter beer. That's going to be our 1 fruity beer for the day. Now we're going to do some stouts. This is from 10 Ben's Beer, which I don't actually know them. I don't think I've had them before. Where are they from? Vermont. Communist beer. That's okay. If the beer is good, we can overlook that they're communists. This is going to be a split personality coconut stout. Now, if you've never had a coconut stout before, that might sound a little bit weird for a beer, right? But it's really good. Coconut stouts are one of my favorite. They are second only to peanut butter stouts, which I got a couple of them today. But like if you've never had a coconut stout, I definitely recommend it. We have to overlook the fact that they're in Vermont. You know, we don't know for sure that they're communists. Maybe they're the rare Vermont libertarian. There are libertarians in Vermont. We never know. So that's going to be our second option, is going to be our coconut stout. And then we have 2 peanut butter beers. I want to make sure I have them in the right order. So don't get confused. We got 2 peanut butter beers, so don't confuse them. The first peanut butter beer we have is Panorama Peanut Butter Stout, and this is from Plymouth, New Hampshire. I'm pretty sure I've had this one before, but I think I had it at Pork Fest while I was also on drugs, and so I don't remember it. Don't judge me. But I mean, peanut butter stouts are usually pretty good. I'm pretty sure I've had it before. An American stout brewed with natural peanut butter showcasing flavors of roasted peanut, semi-sweet chocolate, and coffee. That's going to be our first one. And then our second one, and I have not had this one before. I know that. This is called Snack Time, a Rock the Barrel collaboration. What does that mean? Also from New Hampshire. Lots of New Hampshire beers today. And this is a peanut butter cookie porter with lactose. Now, when it says it has lactose, that means it's going to be kind of like creamy and smoothie-like, kind of like a dessert beer. So this is going to be like a normal stout, like a Guinness or something, but it has peanut butter flavor. This is going to be a more creamy, kind of like dessert style beer because it has lactose in it. Okay? So those are our options for beer. Let me put the poll in the chat. We again have raspberry vanilla. We have coconut stout. We have peanut butter stout, normal. And then we have peanut butter cookie porter with lactose, which means it's going to be creamy and smoothie-like. Those are our options. Let me know which one you want me to drink first in the chat. And while you're doing that, I will get Daddy Henry all set up for us. The Bernie Sanders beer, that's what we're calling the one from Vermont. I guess that's acceptable. I guess that's acceptable. All right, let's see. What do we have for the vote? Looks like that peanut butter cookie porter is winning. I'm just going to give you guys like 1 more minute for the vote. In the meantime, I just want to do a shout out to everyone watching on Rumble. I do see you guys too. I'm pulling up the Rumble chat on my screen so that I can see it as we are making our way through this presentation. Guys, please make sure you mount the like button for me. Mounting the like button lets YouTube know to actually recommend my channel because I'm shadow banned to high heaven because I haven't played the algorithm game well on YouTube in a while, and that's just the way it goes. Mounting the like button can help me out. It is free. It doesn't cost anything. I really do appreciate it. If you don't feel like mounting the like button, you can high five the like button. You can give the like button a kiss on the cheek. You can put your arm around the like button. You can peg the like button if you're bot. You can do whatever you feel like doing to the like button, guys. Just make sure you do something to it. I really do appreciate it. And please make sure you are subscribed on whatever platform you're watching on. I do stream Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. On Saturday, we go live for Socialism Saturday at 6 p.m. And I don't know what we're watching tomorrow yet. We're going to find a good socialist presentation. Let's see. Thoughts on the new queer pirate? I'm not sure what to think. Conservatives throwing a fit, but for the... What is the queer pirate? Oh, is this has to do with Pirates of the Caribbean? My thoughts would be it's stupid and don't watch it and don't spend money on it, but I don't know why we're having a hissy fit over a movie that is inevitably going to fail at the box office. Like, there are better things to have a hissy fit over, I guess, is my is my thought. But I appreciate it. All right, let's see. Which beer did you guys pick? Peanut butter cookie porter. Let's just get that poured and I can get the rest of the beers back in my cooler. Hang on. My keyboard got wrapped up around my cooler. That's not good. That's not good. You were unsubscribed on your own channel, Sin? YouTube's gonna YouTube. What can you do? Look at this. My mother got me this wine cooler for Christmas. I was like, this is one of my mother's most intuitive gifts ever. I have to say, this has worked out really well. I don't think my mother thought I was going to use it to drink beer on the internet, but, you know, we can't be too, sometimes we just can't predict these things, Joanne, okay? Let's see what this beer looks like. Lactose beers can be iffy. Sometimes they're really good and sometimes they're too. It doesn't actually look like this has a lot of lactose in it, which I think is actually a good thing. Cheers, everyone. Happy Friday. We made it through another week. Let us know if you're drinking something fun in the chat. Beth, I just have to say, Queen Beth, I love that we have turned you into me in regards to shitting on conservatives. When Beth first came to my channel, Beth couldn't stand me because I would shit on conservatives so well. And this pissed Beth off. But then she came back and she started listening. And now Beth shits on conservatives just as much as I do. I'm an acquired taste. It sometimes takes some time. But eventually, people always discover that I was right all along. All right. Let me see how this beer is. It does indeed taste like a peanut butter cookie. Excellent choice, everyone. All right, let's get this presentation started. Again, we are watching Daddy Henry Giroux, the protege of Paulo Freire. Henry is in the bottom right-hand corner over here with the little glasses. And we're going to see what Henry says about critical pedagogy in education.
Good afternoon, colleagues, esteemed guests, scholars, students, and friends. I am Sharif Uddin, an assistant professor and program director of the Master of Arts in Teaching program at Morgan State University. Today, we convene at Morgan State University, a beacon of urban intellectual pursuit in Maryland. Participating in this intellectual dialogue underscores your determination to reinforce the critical pedagogy movement for a more compassionate and just world. Thank you for joining. Our distinguished guest, Dr. Henry Giroux, guided our discourse today. He carries forward the legacy of great minds like Paulo Freire and a friend of great scholars like Professor Noam Chomsky and Dr. Gowley. I extend my heartiest welcome.
Hang on. I literally just got a comment on YouTube from one of the James Lindsay stands, and I want to read you what this is the type of audience that James Lindsay cultivates. And like I said, as long as you assholes are annoying me with your ridiculousness, I'm going to keep like the more you assholes annoy me, the more I'm going to criticize James Lindsay. So let me read you this comment that I just got from a James Lindsay stan. As part of James's regular audience, I have consumed hundreds of hours of his content. Oh, really? You've consumed hundreds of hours of James Lindsay's content? Good for you. I have watched thousands of hours of far left activist trainings in the real world over the past 3 years, but you consumed hundreds of hours of James Lindsay? Good on you, bro. Good on you. I have consumed hundreds of hours of his content, as well as read a lot of external works around it and expanded beyond what he talks about. Anyone's big grand stand against James is to harp about social reproduction, when a large amount of James's work explores culture as a form of capital in the Marxian sense, screams uninformed and emotionally driven outbursts. He has a book called Race Marxism. I really don't understand why where she's coming from, but she's not convincing me she's better read than James on this topic, no matter how much she ironically calls him daddy. And to quote Dave Chappelle, Twitter isn't a real place. That right there is the extent of the argument that we get from the James Lindsay stands, because the James Lindsay stands don't bother to do the barest minimal research to find out what I'm doing, what I'm talking about, why I am absolutely positive that I've covered more in this area than James Lindsay has. Like, we're doing more research into James Lindsay's ideas right now on this stream than any of James Lindsay's stands are doing in regards to what I've actually done. But keep advertising, guys. Keep advertising that James Lindsay hasn't adequately informed you. My audience knows how stupid you guys look. You guys don't know how stupid you look because you're just listening to everything that James says and you're not listening to anything anyone else says. But my audience knows how stupid you guys look. Well, they are defending James and not defending the topic and making their case. Well, yeah, because in the land of the Lindsay stands, the only thing that matters is James's ego and not, reality. Anyway.
And deepest thanks to Dr. Giroux for accepting this invitation. Your company exhilarates.
Exactly. Watching and reading academics on socialism is nothing compared to watching socialists in real time, James Lindsay stands. Carlin bad. They present no research or receipts. Isn't it ironic that James Lindsay stands are completely incapable of presenting any research or primary source receipts at all, like zero every single time? Peak hero worship. Yep. I feel the same way, Stony Baloney. It's a scarcity mindset. There is enough socialism for all of us to hate together. If only the James Lindsay stands would realize that. If only James Lindsay himself would realize that. Whatever. Oh, no. Sam, Carlin derangement syndrome has been around for a long time. Carlin derangement syndrome has been around for like 3-4 years, something like that. Anyway.
And honors us. As a graduate student here at Morgan, I was introduced to the concept of critical pedagogy by one of my professors and later my dissertation chair, Dr. Benjamin Welsh. This sparked an academic pursuit that led me into the insightful world of Henry Giroux's work. His unique perspective, articulated through evocative phrases like zombie politics, disimagination zone, synonymize wisdom and intrigue. His use of metaphors equating to the alliance of Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher is indeed thought-provoking. A paper inspired by his writing, Critical Pedagogy and its Implication in the Classroom, later transformed into a journal article, has become my most cited contribution, a testimony to Dr. Giroux's inspirational influence.
Now Henry's
Today, we are privileged to welcome Dr. Giroux in our midst, eagerly anticipating his words. I now pass on the stage to Dr. Thurman Bridges. Dr. Thurman Bridges is an associate professor and chair of the Department of Teacher Education and Professional Development at Morgan State University, whose career started as a middle school social studies teacher in Richmond, Virginia. He earned a Bachelor of Arts degree and Master of Teaching degree from the University of Virginia. and he completed his doctoral studies in curriculum and instruction within the Minority and Urban Education Graduate Program at the University of Maryland, College Park. He also completed 2-year postdoc research fellowship at Columbia University, New York. His research explores the social context of urban education, African American male teacher identity, and hip hop pedagogy. Dr. Bridges, we are looking
Thank
forward
you.
to welcome remark.
Thank you, Dr. Udine. Thank you, Dean Prime, and thank you to our esteemed guest, Dr. Henry Giroux. I am not the invited guest, so my words will be brief. But to initially extend a welcome to all the participants, and a thank you to Dr. Udine for his vision in bringing our esteemed guest. My simple statement today is that the Department of Teacher Education is in the business of developing or helping to develop effective principals and effective school teachers. And the context of the teaching and learning environment
Jan is so trying to get
aligns
blocked.
well with the
Jan
theme
is
of today's
desperate for
talk
that Moms
as
for Liberty
relates
block.
to
He's
democracy
working very hard.
being at risk because of tyranny. So our work is to prepare teachers and principals to work in an environment.
Okay, so the premise of this is that democracy is at risk because of tyranny. Pop quiz for the chat. How do we think the people in this Zoom are going to define both democracy and tyranny? Based on the ridiculous amount of socialist presentations that we have watched in the past several years, how do we think that the people on this Zoom call are going to define democracy and tyranny? So do both. Democracy is socialism, tyranny is capitalism. Tyranny is capitalism, democracy is socialism. Exactly. Democracy means socialism. Socialism is in jeopardy by capitalism. Democracy is socialism. Tyranny is capitalism. Exactly. You see, you guys are so on the ball. So on the ball. Well done.
Environment where democracy is at question and tyranny is leering its ugly head. And so I'm excited about today's talk to make meaning of how we can do this work in a way that promotes democracy and humanism and fight against that which threatens those two ideas. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to the talk.
Thank you, Dr. Bridges. Now I request Dr. Glenda Prime.
Oh, is everyone doing an introduction?
Urban Studies of Morgan State University for her welcome remark to introduce today's speaker and to invite him for his thoughtful lecture. Dr. Glenda Prime is the Dean of the School of Education and Urban Studies. Dean Prime holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Chemistry, Biology, Statistics, in addition to Master of Arts and PhD in Education. All degrees are from the University of West Indies. She's a professor of science education and has published numerous articles in science and technology education journals. Her work has received international recognition and has been an invited speaker at several national and international scholarly meetings. She joined Morgan State University in 1999 and has served in numerous academic and administrative capacities. While after Dr. Prime's introduction to our guest, then our guest will start his lecture. By this time, dear attendees, you may post your questions in the chat box. And I request Dr. Simon Gibson, a nationally recognized literacy expert and an associate professor of the Department of Teacher Education, to monitor the chat and to facilitate the Q&A session. Thank you, Dr. Prime.
Thank you, Dr. Udine, and welcome everyone. It is an honor for us to have all of you here, truly an international gathering. I see colleagues from various countries. I see Canada and the UK and various parts of the US. Welcome to all of you. It is an essential function of institutions of higher education to bring together ideas and scholarship from around the world. That's the way we move our fields forward. That's the way we are able to get the best ideas that have the potential for transforming the world as we bring multiple perspectives to bear on the work that we do. I would read a brief bio of Dr. Giroux.
Daddy
He
Giroux.
is the Paulo Freire Distinguished Scholar in Critical Pedagogy and currently holds the McMaster University Chair for Scholarship in the Public Interest in the Department of English and Cultural Studies. In 2002, he was named as one of the top 50 educational thinkers of the modern period in 50 Modern Thinkers on Education, from Piaget to the present, as part of Routledge's Key Guides publication series. Throughout his life, Henry Giroux has sought to develop a critical theory of education, emphasizing crucial intersections between the role of education in schools and universities with that of culture and public life.
What does critical theory in education mean? Pop quiz for the chat. When they say that Henry Giroux is working on critical theory in education, what does that mean? Even the James Lindsay stands should be able to answer this question. This is an easy one. This is a softball. I threw this one underhanded. It's super slow. You guys are going to get a home run. What does it mean to be focusing on critical theory in education? Anti-capitalism in education, Marxism, critical theory in education equals Marxist indoctrination, Marxism in education. Why? Why does critical theory in education mean Marxism? Marxism, Marxist ideology being taught, Marxism, focusing on Marxism. Why? Does critical theory mean socialism in classrooms? Critical theory is socialism history, critical consciousness. They're teaching the next generation to be little socialists. Yup. Bringing socialism ideas to each subject in education to re-educate kids. Well, not to re-educate them, because it's not re-education, is it? It's just education. Because they're not unteaching them like inconvenient things. This is their education from the time they're kids. Because merit education perpetuates the next capitalist worker rather than critical theory perpetuating the next proletarian worker. That's a good answer, Tayton. They're teaching their version of history and skewing the conversation towards their viewpoint. Indeed, indeed. All right, let's keep going.
His vision of critical pedagogy advocates for the need to make pedagogy central to politics itself and to help create the conditions necessary for developing a formative culture.
Pedagogy is central to politics itself. What does that mean? Pedagogy is central to politics itself. I like how she just answered the previous question I just asked. Pedagogy is central to politics itself. What does that mean? I want this in practice, guys. What does that mean in practice? Pedagogy is central to politics itself. It means teaching is political. It means not just teaching activism, but that teachers are activists, because teaching is a political act. Education is a political act. The role of being an educator itself is a political act. Does everyone understand that? This is why over 90% of teachers donate to the Democratic Party.
That provides the foundation for developing critical citizens and a meaningful and substantive democracy. Henry Giroux, born in Providence, Rhode Island, completed a Master of Arts degree in history at Appalachian State University. After teaching high school social studies in Barrington, Rhode Island for 6 years, Giroux earned a Doctor of Arts degree in history at Carnegie Mellon. He held positions at Boston, Miami, and Pennsylvania State University. In 2004, Giroux began serving as the Global TV Network Chair in Communication at McMaster University in Hamilton, Ontario. In 2005, Dr. Giroux received an honorary doctorate from Memorial University. In 2015, he was honored with the Doctorate of Humane Letters from the College of Educational Studies at Chapman University, as well as the Changing the World Award and the Paulo Freire Democratic Project Social Justice Award. In 2017, he was awarded an honorary doctorate from the University of the West of Scotland, UK. He's on the editorial and advisory boards of numerous national and international scholarly journals and has served as the editor or co-editor of 4 scholarly book series. Dr. Giroux's work in the area of critical pedagogy is particularly important and timely as we are in a period where democracy is under threat. We welcome you, Dr. Giroux. Look forward to the insights that you will share with us. We are privileged to be beneficiaries of your years of scholarship, and I thank you for your willingness to join us today. I also want to take this opportunity to thank our own Dr. Udin for organizing this event, which I know will be extremely beneficial to all of us. Welcome, Dr. Giroux. We look forward to your presentation, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Glenda, and thank you, Sharif, for inviting me. To say the very least, I'm honored to be here.
I'm disappointed we can't see Henry's face.
Morgan State University invited me.
But I'm going to keep
These
those
are very
captions up.
perilous times, and it
Can't
seems
be
to me that
ableist.
we have an obligation as educators to address in some fundamental way what the threats are that are increasingly very dangerous, and to say the very least, undermine, I would think, the very public and democratic nature of higher education itself. I want to begin by simply talking for a moment about what I plan to do, because what I plan to do is not always what I do. And so you'll get a sense of how this talk could have unfolded and hopefully will unfold in light of what I'm going to say. Before I begin, I want to mention that some of the issues that I address in this talk are fundamentally about the challenges that we face at a time of what I call an emerging fascist politics. And the first thing I want to do is I want to talk about the threat that education faces by far-right extremists in the United States, or the threat that is produced by far-right extremists in the United States. I want to talk about the rise of what I call apartheid pedagogy.
Oh, can I move the
and its
captions?
embrace of white supremacy. I want to analyze this attack on
Can I-
higher
oh, I
education
can.
against earlier
Oh, shit. Hang on. How do I move the captions? I just did it, but now it's all messing up. Why is my screen going crazy? I just wanted to. Now my slime is getting all. Hang on. Now I've messed up the time. Something has gone horribly wrong. Okay. Hang on. First, what the fuck? I'm not even clicking on anything right now, and it's still moving stuff. Okay, we're moving the captions up here. My slime is now all over a cord because I didn't put it in the container first. Okay, let's go.
Doctorate from
We're going to go back.
University invited me.
There we go.
These are very
Aha!
perilous times, and it seems to me that we have an obligation as educators to address in some fundamental way what the
No,
threats
that was
are
perfect, Reagan. Thank you.
that are increasingly very dangerous, and to say the very least, undermine, I
slime's
would
all over
think,
my
the
hoodie.
very public and democratic nature of higher education itself.
Oh no.
I want to
no.
begin by simply talking for a moment about what I plan to do, because what I plan to do is not always what I do. And so you'll get a
James Lindsay Stan update. So that same asshole who commented before that I read you guys his comment, I commented back at him. I said, I think it's very brave of you to brag about the fact that you have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about, which means James Lindsay has not informed you. And he commented back, if you don't know that culture is capital, is the explicit claim that's made to justify women as a commodity removed from economics, then you're a lost cause. What does that even mean? This is what James Lindsay is teaching his audience. If you don't know that culture is capital is the explicit claim that's made to justify women as a commodity removed from economics, then you're a lost cause. No, James Lindsay Stan. No, James Lindsay Stan. Do you know what I know that the far left argues? The far left argues that capitalism, which is defined as private property ownership, created the gender binary, which is also called the patriarchy, which can also be referred to as toxic masculinity, which put women in the home doing the unpaid labor of birthing and raising the future generation of proletariat worker. And it also put men in the workplace where they had all the power and made all the money. And that is quite literally what the patriarchy is. That is what the gender binary is. That's why the goal of queer Marxism is to abolish the gender binary, which means get rid of gender entirely. They don't want men. They don't want women. This is not a war just on men. This is not a war just on women. They don't want any gender at all. That is literally what non-binary means. One of the goals of abolishing the gender binary is because they want to attack the nuclear biological family, because they believe that the nuclear family upholds capitalism because of social reproduction theory, and social reproduction theory says that social systems will quite literally reproduce themselves unless they were disrupted. So attacking the gender binary is a way to attack the nuclear family, which is a way to attack capitalism. You guys can have my explanation for things, or you can have James Lindsay's explanation for things, which apparently is culture is capital. That is the explicit claim that's made to justify women as a commodity removed from economics, then you're a lost cause. This is the difference between James Lindsay and I. We are not the same in any way. And I'm tired of pretending otherwise.
Sense of how this talk could have unfolded and hopefully will unfold in light of what I'm going to say. Before I begin, I want to mention that some of the issues that I address in this talk are fundamentally about the challenges that we face at a time of what I call an emerging fascist politics. And the first thing I want to do is I want to talk about the threat that education faces by far-right extremists in the United States, or the threat that is produced by far-right extremists in the United States. I want to talk about the rise of what I call apartheid pedagogy and its embrace of white supremacy. I want to analyze this attack on higher education against earlier modes of authoritarianism and its upgraded contemporary versions. Fourthly, I want to talk about, as Glenda has mentioned, why I think education is central to politics. And I don't mean simply central to the politics of higher or public education, but central to politics in general. Finally, fourthly, I want to talk about the need to shift in public consciousness and the reviving of what I would call, and my former colleague Stanley Aronowitz used to call, the radical imagination, or even the public and social imagination. Next, I want to talk about the role of educators as public intellectuals, the concept of educated hope, and I want to end by offering some suggestions about educational reform, tentative and incomplete, of course, but I think these things have to be mentioned outside of simply, so we can merge a discourse of critique with a discourse of possibility. So let me begin. Across the globe, democratic institutions such as the independent media, schools, the legal system, certain financial institutions, and higher education are under siege. The promise, if not ideal.
Did you notice he called them democratic institutions? Schools are democratic institutions. When socialists, I know we've already covered this, but just in case people have just joined or people are new, and I just got my power cord stuck in my slime again. I know we've already covered this, but just in case people are confused, when socialists say the word democracy, they mean socialism, because socialists literally do believe that the only true form of democracy is socialism, because they believe that that is the only way in which everyone has their voice heard in the scenario or whatever. So when Henry is saying schools are democratic institutions, what he means is schools are socialist institutions.
Of democracy are receding as far-right extremists breathe new life into a fascist past by subverting
That means
language,
capitalism.
democratic values, critical thinking.
I very literally, when Henry says that the far right is taking us down a fascist path, I very literally have Henry on video saying that fascism is defined as capitalism.
And social justice. Education has increasingly become a tool of domination as right-wing pedagogical apparatuses controlled by the entrepreneurs of hate attack workers, the poor, people of color, refugees, immigrants from the South, and others now deemed or considered disposable. In the midst of an era when an older social order is crumbling and a new one is struggling to define itself, there emerges a time of confusion, danger, and moments of great restlessness. The present moment is at an historical conjuncture in which the structures of liberation and authoritarianism combine to shape a future that appears increasingly to be an unthinkable nightmare rather than a realizable dream.
Wow, Henry's all teed up,
Paul
isn't he?
Giroux observes, we live at a time when, quote, the horrors of the past are much closer than we would like to imagine. The long shadow of domestic fascism, defined as a project of racial and cultural cleansing, is with us once again, both in North America
It's
and abroad.
capitalism.
Educators have seen the ghost of fascism before in acts of savage colonialism and dispossession in an era of slavery.
Colonialism also means capitalism because it means enforcing the oppressive force of capitalism on the land that was privatized and stolen from the indigenous peoples. Colonialism is a subset of imperialism, which also means capitalism. Lenin also said that imperialism was like the highest, or that capitalism was the highest form of imperialism, or something like that. And so when Henry is saying colonialism, and that fascism is driven by colonialism, he means capitalism.
By the brutality of whippings and neck irons, and in a Jim Crow age in which the age most obvious in the spectacularized horror of murderous lynchings. More recently, we have viewed fascist acts of terror in a politics of disappearance and genocidal erasures under the dictatorships, of course, of Hitler, Augusto Pinochet in Chile, and others. And in each case, history has given us a glimpse of what the end of humanity would look like. And yet, the lessons of history, with its language of hate, machineries of torture, death camps, and murderous violence as a political tool, are too often ignored. As the promise and the ideals of democracy are increasingly undermined and threatened by right-wing extremists, the public imagination is in a state of perpetual crisis. In the current historical moment, tyranny, fear.
Hang on, Blake, you're new, so okay. I should say this. I've been going rather fast in this episode and I haven't been kind to new people. Blake is relatively new here, and Blake is saying I must have slime in my brain. It's a lot to take in. Blake, it is a lot to take in. And I would say the same thing for anyone who is relatively new to my content. If you are new to my channel, if you're new to watching socialism with me, it's a lot to take in. And if you feel overwhelmed, that is exactly the way you should feel. Make sure you're asking questions in the chat, Blake. We will talk you through it. This is the very best way that you can learn how to speak the language of these people. But if you're feeling overwhelmed, everyone was there at one point. I was there at one point. Everyone in the chat was there at one point. This is how you learn to speak the language of the left, though. So welcome. We're glad you showed up, and let us know if you have questions in the chat.
Bigotry have become the defining modes of governance and education in many places. Right-wing politicians, boasted by the power of corporate-controlled media, now construct ways of thinking and feeling that prey on the anxieties and the fears of the isolated, the disenfranchised, the powerless, and those groups that are considered simply, once again, disposable. This is a form of apartheid pedagogy, engineered to substitute disillusionment and incoherence for a sense of comforting ignorance while waging a war on democracy. In an age of apartheid pedagogy.
Michael is also new, so let's welcome Michael. If you guys are feeling overwhelmed, it's cool, man. It's cool. Everyone has to start somewhere. Just hang in there. Get through it, and you will see the world in a whole new way.
The concentration of power in the hands of a far-right ruling elite has ensured that any notion of change regarding equality and social and racial justice is now tainted by the toxic thrust of white nationalism, which runs through American culture like an electric current. Jim Crow is back without apologies, suffocating American society in a wave of voter suppression laws, the elevation of racist discourse to the centers of power, and the ongoing attempt by right-wing politicians to implement repressive pedagogical policies and practices in which matters of justice, ethics, equity, and historical memory vanish from the classrooms of public and higher education. In the current era of white supremacy, what I call apartheid pedagogy is present in the attempts by modern Republican Party politicians to rewrite the narrative regarding who counts as an American. This whitening of collective identity is largely reproduced by reactionary attacks on diversity and race sensitivity training, critical race programs in government, and issues dealing with racial inequality, of course, in the schools. These bogus assaults are all too familiar and include widespread and coordinated ideological and pedagogical attacks against both historical memory and critical forms of education. How else to explain that in Florida, teachers have been told to put a positive spin on slavery? The fight to censor critical, truth-telling versions of American history and the current persistence of systemic racism are part of a larger
systemic
conservative
racism.
project
Okay.
to prevent teachers.
Hang on, because we have some new people in the chat, I want to specifically talk about systemic racism. Because in 2020, the dictionary was updated under the definition of racism to include the term systemic racism. This is critically important for new people to understand. Because the most important piece of coded language that you need to wrap your head around if you want to understand the left is the idea that whiteness, white supremacy, racism, it's not about your skin color. It is about capitalism. And systemic racism is how we know that. Let me explain. The woke left believe, the socialist left believe, whatever you want to call them, that capitalism, which is specifically defined as private property ownership, created slavery because slavery is an institution in which people are bought and sold as private property. That capitalism is the system that drove slavery in the first place. Slavery then created systemic racism, which are racial disparities in outcomes. In order to solve for systemic racism, you need to solve for the system that upheld the disparities. The system is capitalism. When they say systemic racism, institutional racism, or any other variation of some form of racism that they're trying to say applies to all levels of society, they mean the system is capitalism. The system that they want to undermine is capitalism. It has nothing to do with your skin color. We know that. I just saw an article on Twitter earlier today where a Black conservative organization was targeted by leftist activists. If it was about skin color, there would be no Black conservative organization being targeted by leftist activists. Because if it was all about just being Black or white, then all they would have cared about was it was a Black conservative organization. In 2020, Black-owned businesses in Minneapolis were specifically targeted to be burnt down by Black Lives Matter. It wasn't about skin color. It was about ideology. It was about capitalism. Michael says, I hear institutional racism a lot in the news media. That's exactly right, Michael. Institutional racism means capitalism because capitalism is the institution. That's what they're referring to. They say that Kanye West is white. They say that Jay-Z is white. They say that Larry Elder is white. Joe Biden goes on the radio and says, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. This is not about skin color. It is only and exclusively about capitalism. Once you understand this, that is the biggest key that you need to unlock in terms of understanding the left. Everything flows down from that. If you guys have questions, let me know. Put them in the chat.
Students, journalists, and others from thinking critically and speaking openly about crucial issues that undermine a viable democracy. Such attacks are about more than censorship and racial cleansing. They use education and the power of persuasion.
James Lindsay, stand update. James Lindsay, stand update. The asshole in the comments who is defending James Lindsay's honor has replied to me again. I replied to him and said, I just read your comments on my live stream and we all laughed at how much you don't know. And he replied back to me, not surprising, the person whose only insult is calling someone daddy and bragging about learning basic sociology before Lindsay talked about it, it hasn't got an intellectual response. So again, the James Lindsay stands, in their really informed opinion, believe that I just learned basic sociology. And that I don't have any intellectual response to James at all. Because it's not like I've covered more abolish the family. It's not like the James Lindsay stan didn't even bother to look for how much abolish the family content I've covered on my channel. This is how lazy James Lindsay supporters are. I never want you assholes to get this lazy. And I say you assholes in the chat with as the best term of endearment, okay? I mean it lovingly. Like, we're all assholes here, whatever. But I never want you guys to get this lazy. I don't ever want to hear about any of you disappointing me on someone else's channel by acting like a hooligan.
As weapons to discredit any critical approach to grappling with the history of racism, white supremacy, and to discredit in many ways and to shut down the critical faculties necessary for students and others to examine history as a resource in order to, quote, investigate the core conflicts between a nation founded on notions of liberty, freedom, and equality, and a nation built on slavery, exploitation, and exclusion. The current attacks on critical race theory, if not critical thinking itself, are but one instance of the rise of apartheid pedagogy. This is a pedagogy in which education is used in the service of dominant power to both normalize racism, class inequities, and economic inequality, while safeguarding the interests of those who benefit from such work. In pursuit of such a project, they impose what I call a pedagogy of oppression, complacency, and mindless discipline. They ignore or downplay matters of injustice and the common good, and really embrace notions of community and social responsibility as part of a pedagogy that engages pressing social, economic, and civic problems. Instead of a civic education that enriches the public imagination, they endorse elements of indoctrination centered to formalizing and upgrading a mode of authoritarian politics. In the current historical moment, the threat of
Daddy Henry is so engaging in the ironclad law of woke projection, it's not even funny.
Authoritarianism has become more dangerous than ever. The authoritarian project is particularly evident in the United States in a number of right-wing governors who have put into place a range of reactionary educational policies that range from disallowing teachers to mention critical race theory and issues dealing with sexual orientation in their classrooms, to forcing educators to sign loyalty oaths, post their syllabuses online, give up tenure, allow students to film their classes, and much more. Regarding the banning of books, Judd Lugum has, of course, notes that across the country, right-wing activists are seeking to ban thousands of books from schools and other public libraries.
And that's stupid.
Those promoting these bans, such as the controversial right-wing group Moms for Liberty, who have been labeled, by the way, as a terrorist organization by the Southern Poverty Law Center, often claim to protect children in many ways from allegedly from pornographic ideas.
Yeah,
but in
thanks a
fact,
lot,
what
Mill.
these books frequently ban are books by people of color, LGBTQ individuals, and many of the books labeled as pornographic are actually highly acclaimed novels, such as Toni Morrison's The Color Purple, and of course George Orwell's, among others, Animal Farm.
Wait. Are the MILFs trying to ban The Color Purple and Animal Farm? Is that real? Fucking MILFs. The MILFs are no. It would not actually surprise me if the MILFs tried to ban A Color Purple and Animal Farm. It would, like, I'm not saying I'm trusting Henry's word as like the solid truth, but like, it would not surprise me to find out that the MILFs are trying to ban those books.
Such policies echo a fascist past in which the banning of books eventually led to the imprisonment of dissidents and eventually the disappearance of bodies. Not only are these attacks on certain books and ideas aimed at educators and minorities of class and color, this far-right attack on education is also part of a larger war on the very ability to think, to question, to engage in politics from the vantage point of being critical, informed.
Hang on. Steve, who I trust because he's been around for a while, says, I saw it claimed in one news headline over a year ago. Guys, it really wouldn't surprise me if some MILF for Liberty somewhere got the idea that banning Animal Farm was a good idea and then did it in their local town, and then that made it into the news media. I'm not saying it's a national approved thing or anything, but it really wouldn't surprise me, and this is why you don't do book banning in the first place, because it is always a slippery slope. It was always a bad strategy. It's going to be struck down by the courts. It's going to be years of time and money wasted. And it's driven the left to new levels of insanity.
And willing to engage in a culture of questioning. More generally, it's part of a concerted effort to destroy public and higher education and the very foundations of civic literacy, and most importantly, political
I want to
agency.
destroy public education.
Under the rule of emerging authoritarianism, political extremists are attempting to turn education into a space for killing the imagination, a place where provocative ideas are banished and where faculty and students are punished through the threat of force or harsh disciplinary measures for speaking out, engaging in dissent, and holding power accountable. I don't know if you know this, but you probably realize that in Idaho, a law was just passed. For instance, any faculty that talks about anything that resembles an indication that he or she is against the abortion laws, the restricting of women's reproductive rights, can now literally face criminal charges. Think about that. What does that remind us of with respect to the past? In this case, the attempt to undermine public schooling and higher education as public goods and democratic public spheres is accompanied by a systemic attempt to destroy the notion that they are vital to democratic public goods. Schools that view themselves as democratic public spheres are now disparaged by right-wing Republicans and politicians who call them, are you ready? Socialism factories.
Yes.
Government schools.
Yes.
And citadels of left-wing thought.
They are government
For those of you
schools.
who are familiar with the speech that Donald Trump just gave in Milwaukee, if you get a chance, take a look at it. Because he goes on and on talking about how he wants to get rid of left-wing radicals, communists, Marxists, because they represent, using the language of fascism, they represent rodents and vermin who have to be destroyed and removed from the body politic.
Good for Trump.
Again, we've heard this language before. It seems to me that in talking about these issues, it's hard to imagine a more urgent moment for making education central to politics. And at stake here is the notion that education is a moral and political project rooted in the goal of emancipation, especially if we don't want to default on education's role as a democratic public sphere.
What does Henry want to emancipate education from? When Henry says that education that education is critical to politics or whatever, like what and it needs to be emancipated, what does Henry want to emancipate education from? He wants to emancipate education from capitalism. From private ownership, private property, from capitalism. Yep, capitalism. Exactly.
Moreover, this is a view of education that encourages human agency, one that is not content to enable people to only be critical thinkers, but also to be engaged individuals and social agents, building on the legacy of W.E.B. Du Bois, John Dewey, and Paulo Freire. This is a pedagogical project that recognizes that there is no democracy without knowledgeable and informed citizens. This is a pedagogical practice that calls students beyond themselves, affirms the ethical imperative for them to care for others, embrace historical memory, works to dismantle structures of domination, and enables students to become
Structures of
subjects
domination means
rather than the
capitalism.
objects of history, politics, and power. If educators are going to develop a policy,
If you're new here and you're getting the impression that everything means capitalism, that's because it does. Tayton says it's crazy how socialists make their own bed and somehow get Republicans to lay in it. I mean, my God, they create crisis like no other. Well, that's rules for radicals, isn't it? That they are Alinsky's disciples.
is capable of awakening students' critical, imaginative, and historical sensibilities, it seems to me it's vital to engage education as a project of collective and individual empowerment.
Collective.
It's vital to engage in some way a project based on the search for truth and enlarging of the civic imagination and the practice of freedom. We live at a time when the unthinkable has become so normalized that anything that can be said and everything that matters is anything can be said and everything that matters is unsaid. Moreover, this degrading of truth and the emptying of language makes it all the more difficult to distinguish good from evil, justice from injustice. And under such circumstances, the American public is rapidly losing a language and ethical grammar that challenges the political and racist machineries of cruelty, state violence, and targeted exclusions. Critical pedagogy, both in its symbolic and institutional forms, I believe, has a vital role to play in fighting the emergence and the resurgence of a false rendering of history, religious fundamentalism, and an accelerating militarism and ultranationalism. As far-right movements disseminate toxic, racist, and ultranationalistic images of the past, it's essential to reclaim critical pedagogy as a project crucial to developing and affirming an historical consciousness and moral witnessing as central elements of education. This is especially true at a time when historical and social amnesia have become
Hang on. Blake, I know you're new here, but are you under the impression that the Democrats are losing? Because they're not. They're not. If you have been hearing from conservative influencers that there are droves of people leaving the left, that's not true. It's not true. And I know that because I was, for an entire year of my life, the standard bearer of the woman who left the left after going to a Trump rally. This is a narrative that conservatives prop up when it's politically convenient for them to do so. Do you know how I know that there are not droves of people leaving the left? Because a couple weeks ago, I got an email from producers at Fox News. Fox News were desperate to find people that left the Democratic Party to become conservatives because they couldn't find anyone, and they were really looking to have someone on their news station, just like they had me on 4 years ago, to tell the story of all these Democrats leaving the left and going to the conservatives. But they couldn't find anyone, so they finally emailed me and they said, "Carlin, do you know anyone who has left the left? Because we want to interview them." And I was like, I didn't even respond to them. First of all, because I don't actually know anyone else who has left the left recently, because conservatives have done pissed off a lot of people, and they're not providing a soft landing space for people who are growing weary of the left at this point. But isn't that funny? Isn't that funny that the producers at Fox News, who are desperate to shill this narrative, literally couldn't find anyone to do it? They've tried to do this they've tried to replace me several times. I get emails about it every time. This is a regular thing that they do to try to create the impression that it's happening, but that doesn't mean it's happening.
national pastime. It seems this is especially true furthermore when an authoritarian form of politics that thrives on ignorance, fear, and the suppression of dissent and hate increasingly becomes normalized. The merging of power with new digital technologies in everyday life and popular culture have not only altered time and space, they've expanded the reach of culture as an educational force. A culture of lies, cruelty, and hate, coupled with the fear of history and a 24/7 flow of information, now wages war on attention spans, the conditions necessary to think, contemplate, and arrive at sound judgments. It seems to me that it's crucial for educators to acknowledge that education and schooling are not the same, and that schooling must be viewed as a sphere distinctive from the educational forces at work in the larger culture. The point, of course, is that an array of cultural apparatuses extending from the social media and streaming services to the rise of artificial intelligence and corporate-controlled media platforms also constitute a vast educational machinery with enormous power and influence. What both schooling and the wider cultural sphere of education have in common is that they often work in tandem with each other to shape and orchestrate dominant social relations, constitute prevailing notions of common sense, and open up conceptual horizons, modes of identification, and social relations to which consciousness and identities are often shaped and legitimated. Any viable notion of critical pedagogy needs to create the educational visions and tools to produce a radical shift in consciousness.
Radical means
It must
socialist.
be capable of recognizing both the scorched earth policies of a market-based system that is characterized by staggering inequalities.
Hang on. The scorched earth policies of a market-based system that is characterized by staggering inequalities. What does Henry mean when he says the scorched earth policies of a market-based system that is characterized by staggering inequalities? What does Henry mean when he says that? Yeah, when Henry says market-based system, he means free market capitalism. That's what he means. The staggering inequalities that Henry is referring to is the fact that some people own more private property, which is what their definition of capitalism is, than other people. So some people have nicer houses, some people have no houses, some people have better access to healthcare, some people have no access to healthcare. That's what he's talking about. When you exist in the scorched earth policies of a market-based system, it's going to produce, in his mind, staggering inequalities. That means that some people own more stuff than other people. He means the free market. He means capitalism. Private property ownership leads to inequities between people. The uneven distribution of the surplus. Yeah, that means money. Capitalism. And they would rather have equity to get rid of inequalities. Exactly, because when you abolish all private property ownership, you abolish people's ability to own a home, to own land, to own apartment buildings that they can rent out, to own a business, to have parental rights, to have individual liberties. We will only achieve equity when all private property ownership is abolished. That's what they believe. Capitalism is not equity. It's in fact the opposite of equity. When he says equality, he means equity. That's exactly right, James Jones. Yup. Yeah, we can talk about the environmental stuff as well. That is true. Rutu, did anyone ever pick up on the fact that Biden called for a ceasefire last night? Well, I know that some of the Zionists picked up on it because they were pretty pissed. I saw them complaining about it on Twitter. I don't think anyone on the right has, though, but that's just a battle that most of them don't want to fight. Rottweiler, just a small parenthesis, Rules for Radicals is a bit outdated. I recommend reading the updated version, Beautiful Trouble. It's free on the webs. Thank you, Rottweiler. I appreciate that.
Market-based system that is characterized by staggering inequalities and the twisted anti-democratic ideologies that often support it. The
Anti-democratic and
shift in consciousness
socialist.
cannot occur without pedagogical interventions that speak to people in ways in which they can recognize themselves, identify what the issues being addressed, and place the privatization of their troubles in a broader systemic context.
The privatization of their troubles. Because it's privatization that socialists hate more than anything else. Because privatization creates inequities.
An education for empowerment that functions as the practice of freedom should provide a classroom environment that is intellectually rigorous and critical, while allowing students to voice their experiences, aspirations, and dreams. It should be a protective and courageous space in which students should be able to speak, write, and act from a position of agency and informed judgment. It should be a place where education does the bridging work of connecting to the wider society, connects the South to others, and addresses important social and political issues.
When he means
It
the
should
South,
provide the conditions for students to learn how to align themselves.
when Henry says the South, he means the global South. The global South means third world countries, essentially. The global South is not a reference to countries in the Southern Hemisphere that are like, you know, free market. Well, no, there's no free market really capitalism, but like the global South is not a reference to like Australia. Okay. The global South is a reference to third world countries.
With an increased sense of social responsibility, coupled with a passion for equality, justice, and freedom. If the emerging and rebranded authoritarianism in the United States, Europe, and elsewhere is to be defeated, there is a need to make critical education an organizing principle of politics, and this in part can be done with a language that exposes and unravels lies.
Blake is asking a question. I live in the boonies. Should I give up my house and private and property by these standards? Yep. In the socialist utopia, Blake, they don't want you to own a house and they don't want you to own property. You would be assigned your house by the state. There would be no private land ownership. You wouldn't be able to own a business. You wouldn't be able to own an apartment complex. You would have no parental rights because they consider parental rights to be private property. So those have to be abolished too because the kids need to be raised by the community, and you would have no individual liberties. So yeah, it doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter if you're in a red state. It doesn't matter. If these people win, and these people are absolutely winning, you don't own your house or your land anymore, bro. Yeah, wait till Blake finds out about the kitchens. They want to take away your kitchens. No joke. For real. Because your food will be provided by the state. Well, but they're winning, bro, is the thing. They're winning. They're winning. Give it 15, 20 years. No more private property.
Systems of oppression and corrupt relations of power, while making clear that an alternative future is possible. Hannah Arendt was right in arguing that language is critical in highlighting the often hidden, crystallized elements that make authoritarianism likely. The language of critical pedagogy and civic literacy, as Paulo Freire once argued, are powerful tools in the search for truth and the condemnation of untruths and injustices. Moreover, it seems to me it's through language that the history of fascism can be remembered and used to make clear that fascism.
Yup, this is exactly right from Michael. The farmers protesting in Europe is all about the loss of private property. Europe is way more socialist than the United States right now. Europe is ahead of us. So if they're protesting in Europe about the loss of private property, you can make the assumption that's going to come here at some point. And it's probably not going to be as long as you guys think. Well, Canada is getting, parental rights are under attack in the United States all the time. It's not just in Canada. Parental rights are under resounding attack in the United States.
It does not reside solely in the past, and that its traces are always dormant, even in the strongest democracies. At the same time, language, however critical, is not enough and should provide the basis for intervention, for intervening in the world, and in turning people into subjects who take themselves seriously as engaged and critical social actors. Ignorance now rules America. Not the simple, if
Ain't
innocent
that the
ignorance
truth,
that comes
Henry?
from the absence of knowledge, but a malicious,
Ain't that the
manufactured
truth?
ignorance forged in the arrogance and refusal to think hard and critically about issues and to engage language in the pursuit of justice. James Baldwin was certainly right in issuing a stern warning in No Name in the Street when he said that when he wrote that ignorance allied with power is the most ferocious enemy justice can have. For the ruling elite and modern Republican Party, thinking is viewed as an act of stupidity, and thoughtlessness is considered a virtue. You can remember once in the early campaign of Donald Trump before 2016, he boasted about how he loved the uneducated. That now it's become clear what that means. Under such circumstances, there was a full-scale attack on thoughtful reasoning, empathy, collective resistance, and the compassionate
Collective
imagination.
resistance means
In
social.
some ways, the dictatorship of ignorance resembles what John Berger once called ethicide, defined by Joshua Sperling as, quote, the blunting of the senses, the hollowing out of language, the erasure of connections with the past, the dead, place, the land, the soil, possibly to the erasure even of certain emotions, whether pity, compassion, consoling, mourning, or hoping. Words such as love, trust, freedom, responsibility, and choice have been deformed by an authoritarian ideology and market fundamentalism that narrows their meaning either to a commodity, a commercial exchange, a reductive notion of self-interest, or generates a language of bigotry and hatred. As a political and moral practice, critical pedagogy should combine a language of critique and a vision of possibility in the fight to revive civic literacy, civic activism, and the notion of shared and engaged citizenship. Politics loses its emancipatory possibilities if it cannot present the educational conditions for enabling students and others to think against the grain and realize themselves as informed, critical, and engaged citizens. There is no emancipatory politics without a pedagogy capable of awakening consciousness, challenging common sense, and creating modes of analysis in which people discover a moment of recognition that enables them to rethink the conditions that shape their lives. It seems to me that against this emerging fascist politics, one of the things that we as educators have to, in some way, consider is what does it mean to
By the way, and this is off topic, but I wanna just report back. Do you guys know how everyone was telling me last night when I was streaming the Putin interview that like streams were getting pulled down for YouTube violations? That wasn't YouTube being uppity over Putin. That was Tucker Carlson's network putting copyright claims on those videos. So all of the streams that got pulled down last night, that wasn't a left-wing thing from YouTube. That was Tucker Carlson's network putting copyright claims on individuals. And I know that because I can't monetize my stream because of a copyright claim put on it by Tucker Carlson, which is fine. I don't really care. But like, I just want to point that out. For everyone who thought that was a left-wing YouTube conspiracy, that was actually Tucker Carlson.
The role of a public intellectual in border crosses within broader social context. What does it mean, for instance, to, if possible, be able to share ideas with wider publics rather than sort of operate within territorial disciplines in which we talk simply to each other? What does it mean to be able to talk to more general audiences in a language that is clear and clear, accessible, and rigorous? I don't believe that you can be rigorous. I believe that you can be rigorous and accessible at the same time. I don't buy the notion that the only way you can elevate theory in ways that push at the parameters or the boundaries of the imagination, it has to be so opaque that it can be read by 5 people. I think that's just nonsense, and I think it's a form of complicity with dominant ideologies. It seems to me that education operates today as a crucial site of power in the modern world. And if critical pedagogy is to play a role in challenging how power and knowledge and values are deployed, this suggests that one of the serious challenges now facing teachers, artists, and writers is the task of developing pedagogical practices that, as Paulo Freire suggested, not only provide a critical reading of the word, but also a critical reading of the world.
Appreciate it, Brunjak. Thank you.
In order to talk about this in some way, we have to be able to take up what it means to talk about hope. Because it seems to me that without hope, even in the darkest times.
Oh, this is going to be interesting because I actually have a clip from Henry. Hope means hope for a socialist future. Because I have another clip of Henry from a different presentation where he was talking about this in relation to like the Barack Obama hope poster. Let's hear what he has to say.
There is no possibility for resistance, dissent, and struggle. Agency is the condition of struggle, and hope is the condition of agency. Hope expands the space.
Agency is the condition. Is that what he just said? Agency is the condition of struggle. What does struggle mean? Pop quiz for the chat. What does struggle mean? Naruto, last night I found it deeply offensive that Ben Shapiro compared the Biden speech to the Challenger explosion. I mean, Ben Shapiro's done way more offensive things than that, Naruto. I do appreciate it, though. What does struggle mean? Struggle means the revolution, the perpetual revolution, the perpetual revolution, the revolution, the socialist revolution, the perpetual revolution, because the revolution will never end. It's like how in 1984, Oceania was always at war with either Eurasia or East Asia, and they switched it midway through the book because the war is ongoing. The war will never end. Just like that, the perpetual revolution is ongoing. The revolution will never end. Revolution, struggle means the revolution. Okay. Now, let's listen to what Henry has to say when he's defining what hope is in relation to the struggle.
It seems to me that without hope, even in the darkest times, there is no possibility for resistance, dissent, and struggle. Agency is the condition of struggle, and hope is the condition of agency.
Agency is the condition of, Agency is the condition of struggle, which means the perpetual revolution. Hope is the condition of agency. Hope is the condition of the perpetual revolution. When Barack Obama did the Hope poster in 2008, it was hope of the socialist revolution. That's why it looked like socialist propaganda.
Hope expands the space of the present, of the possible, and becomes a way of recognizing and naming the incomplete nature of the present. Such hope offers the possibility of thinking beyond the given. And as the great writer and novelist Eduardo Galeano once argued, we live at a time when hope is wounded, but it's not lost. As Martin Luther King, John Dewey, Paulo Freire, and Nelson Mandela have stated, there is no project of freedom and liberation without education.
Liberation.
And challenging attitudes and institutions at the same time are interrelated. So central to this insight is the notion advanced by people.
Wait. James Lindsay Stan update. I hope you guys like these updates of the argument that I'm having with the James Lindsay Stan in my comments. So I told the James Lindsay Stan, you may want to go do some basic research by searching family on my channel, because otherwise you're going to look very stupid when you find out how much more in depth I've covered it than your hero has. And the James Lindsay Stan did not take my good advice. And the James Lindsay Stan said, I just watched a 2-month-old video where you talked about gender being performative and only just coming to the realization that drag is weaponized against children from a lecture on Butler, so X to doubt. The lecture that we watched by Judith Butler was not actually about how gender was performative. That was actually about how in the socialist revolution we don't have individualism or meritocracy. So he's not even, the James Lindsay Stan is not actually even able to comprehend what he's watching. which is kind of funny in and of itself, and he's still unable to actually Google or even search the word for family on my channel, which will reveal literally over 100 hours of abolish the family content. Yeah, we did watch that lecture from Yale in 2009 where they and this was before Drag Queen Story Hour, where they specifically talked about drag being symbolic of like gender being performative. And quite frankly, if his hero James Lindsay understands that Drag Queen Story Hour is just about teaching kids that gender is performative, then why is James Lindsay still to this day calling everyone a groomer? Because James Lindsay literally seems to imply on basically a daily basis that Drag Queen Story Hour is about sexualizing kids, that all of this is going on in schools is about sexualizing kids. And if he really does understand that Drag Queen Story Hour is just about teaching kids that gender is performative, then why is he calling everyone a groomer? It is sad. It is sad that James Lindsay's audience is too stupid to catch up. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. That's being unfair and unkind. There are a lot of very smart people in James Lindsay's audience that just hasn't found what we're doing yet, and that are more than smart enough to understand the bigger picture when they find it. And I know that because my audience is made up of people who used to watch James Lindsay and then they realized how much more I was teaching than James Lindsay was, and they come and watch my content and they say, "Holy shit, Carlin, you're teaching me way more than James Lindsay ever did." So I'm not implying that everyone in James Lindsay's audience is stupid. I think some of them are just taking on faith that James Lindsay is teaching them everything they need to know because they aren't bothering to look outside and see what other people are doing. But if they did that, they would be more than capable of understanding, holy shit, James Lindsay isn't teaching me half the stuff I thought he was. This particular James Lindsay stan in my comments, though, too stupid. Not smart enough. This is why I implemented IQ requirements for my channel. You have to have at least a 100 IQ to be in my audience. Yep, we have people like Maldi who left Lindsay. He broke up with James Lindsay to come with me because I just learned him so much more.
Yeah, Bourdieu, in the most important forms of domination are not merely economic, but are also at the same time about matters of persuasion. This suggests that academics bear a certain responsibility in acknowledging that the current fight against an emerging authoritarianism and white nationalism across the globe is not only a struggle over economic structures or the commanding heights of corporate power, a position often taken by the left, but doesn't take into consideration
Thank you.
that
It's
also
just
a
gloss.
struggle over vision.
Just gloss.
Visions. It's also a struggle over ideas. It's also a struggle over consciousness and the power to shift the culture itself. Democracy begins to fail and political life becomes impoverished in the absence of those vital public spheres, such as public and higher education, in which civic values, public scholarship, and social engagement allow for a more just and imaginative grasp of the future.
Wait, seriously? Listen, I want to say, I don't care who you guys listen to. If you guys want to listen to James Lindsay and Tim Pool, it really does make no difference to me. I'm kind of having fun with this, but you're telling me you unsubscribe from all of Tim Pool's channels after watching and reading my work? Tolkien fan, I'm honored. Thank you. I mean, to be fair, Tim covers a lot of stuff I don't cover. So, like, I don't begrudge, like, if you want to follow Tim, if you want to, like, Tim doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about when it comes to the left. But Tim covers a lot of news stuff that I don't cover anymore because I don't do day-to-day news. Eventually, like, I just don't do it anymore. It's just like, why? Because I want to do this. But I appreciate that.
Future.
Hey, listen. Listen, I can have as many internet boyfriends and girlfriends as I want, okay? I am queer, polyamorous, pansexual when I'm on the internet. No one's jealous here. It's all good. I'm not anyone's property yet. It's all good. Carlin, can we have a segment where you debunk conservatives? I know I should do this, like a nitwits, but specifically for conservative influencers. I know. Well, why don't you guys DM me stuff like on Twitter that you want me to debunk? That would be helpful. If you guys have like conservative influencers that you want me to debunk, just send it to me on Twitter and we'll see.
Once again, democracy should be a way of thinking about education, one that thrives on connecting pedagogy to the practice of freedom, social responsibility, and of course, the public good. I want to end by talking about some elements of reform. Tentative and incomplete, of course, but at the same time, I think in some ways this may link, and hopefully will link, what might be a language of critique with an ongoing language of
Yeah, it's a good idea, Vince.
So it seems to me that first, in the midst of this current assault on public and higher education, educators should reclaim and expand its democratic vocation, and in doing so, align it with a vision that embraces its mission as a public good. Education is not training. Education is not simply about preparing people for the business world. Education is not simply about educating people to learn how to make things.
What is
or
it?
to learn how to organize a business. It's also about educating people to be engaged citizens who can make judgments, who understand what it means to interrogate the difference between good and evil, who have a sense of what social responsibility means, who have a sense of what it means to produce a future that doesn't merely replicate the present. It should, and secondly, educators should acknowledge and make good in the claim that there is no democracy without informed and knowledgeable citizens, and in doing so, and I think this is crucial, affirm education's critical function, because without its criticality, without that critical function, education isn't education anymore, at least in the most empowering and emancipatory sense. It becomes something else. It's lost in the dribble of instrumentalism. You know, I mean, I can't tell you, to go around the university and see that all the things that people are concerned about are how to use Zoom, you know, how to do Teams, right? I mean, the language of vision has sort of collapsed into a new form of instrumentalism in which we have to ask ourselves, what happened to that vision? What happened in the 80s when Reagan came along and said, government is the enemy, you know, and doesn't need to offer any sense of social responsibility, and that the public good should be turned over to private interest, and that education, in a sense, can be dangerous because in some way it offers up the possibility of recognizing the difference between what is and what ought to be.
Hang on.
Third, in a world.
Have I had a chance to look into woke kindergarten yet? I looked into woke kindergarten a long time ago. I looked into woke kindergarten like over a year ago before conservatives like found out about it because it got covered in the newspaper. Like, here's the thing with this. Like, okay, I understand people want me to look into this. I've been getting a lot of messages about this. Here's my, like, I'm feeling uninspired because I looked into that a year ago. I talked about it back then. And now conservatives are pretending that it's like something new, and I've kind of moved on, to be honest. Like, I don't like covering the current thing because it's just like I feel behind when I'm doing that and it's boring to me. And I understand I probably should, if I was behaving responsibly, I should probably just pretend that I never covered it a year ago and that I just discovered it as soon as everyone else discovered it. But I'm not feeling inspired by it, man. Just not. I wasn't surprised. I was like, duh. So, I don't know. I've got a lot of stuff I'm working on right now. Maybe I'll look into it, but I'm like, I want to cover what the next thing is so that a year from now, conservatives can pretend that they found it first when in fact I covered it a year ago.
World driven by data, metrics, and fragmented knowledge. Educators need to teach students to be border crossers, who can think dialectically, comparatively, and historically. They should teach students to engage in multiple literacies, extending from print and visual culture to digital culture. We should not be interested in simply teaching young people and others how to read culture critically. They need to become cultural producers. It's not enough to be critical. It's not enough to learn skills
They
that
need
then
to become
can be
cultural
incorporated into
producers.
corporate entities that will devalue those skills in terms of their emancipatory possibilities. Because it seems to me that the future of democracy in the United States and elsewhere at the present moment doesn't reside in established institutions. It resides in those alternative institutions that offer the formative cultures that can call established institutions into question. That's not to say we should abandon these institutions, because I think there's always a space of struggle and resistance within them, but they can't be the only institutions. Fourth, it seems to me that educators need to defend critical education as a search for truth, the practice of freedom, and as a pedagogy that enables students to write and act from a position of agency and empowerment. And such a task suggests that critical pedagogy should not only shift the way people think, but encourage them to shape for the better the world in which they find themselves. I mean, this is an old term. It goes back many, many years, the question of practice and what it means to think, to link thinking to the question of action itself. Fifth, educators need to argue for a notion of education that is viewed as inherently political. I know that this upsets some people, but I can't imagine what it means to talk about education that isn't political. One that relentlessly questions the kinds of labor, practices, and forms of teaching, research, and modes of evaluation that are enacted in public and higher education. We live in a world where we simply talk about education as a method, which I think is a terribly political conservative position. It's important to acknowledge that education is always political, because it's a moral and political practice that is always implicated in power relations. Because it produces.
In this presentation, Henry has said that education is political at least like a dozen times at this point. Do you think that Henry believes that education is political? Because it really does seem that Henry believes that education is political.
Political practice that is always implicated in power relations, because it produces particular notions of agency, particular versions of civic life and the larger society and the future itself. Think about a guy like Ron DeSantis, who in Florida puts the banner of freedom on everything he touches, while at the same time bans books, produces curricula that claims that slaves really learned something productive while they were, living under
Stupidest thing Ron DeSantis has ever said.
Practice of slavery, or that LGBTQ people somehow are like pariahs and should be punished and should be banished from any notion of what schooling is about. This is all done in the name of freedom and in the name that education is neutral, when in fact you have these politicians producing indoctrination factories that are now overtly unapologetic about censoring knowledge, about excluding people, about deforming history, and it goes on and on. So it seems to me that to acknowledge I think there's a difference between talking about education as political and about education being politicizing. To talk about education being political is to talk about the question of power, to talk about the question of the future, to talk about what it means to be an engaged and critical citizen, to talk about the relationship between knowledge, values, and social relationships. To talk about politicizing education is talking about an education that says there's only one way or the highway, and this is it. It's not about a culture of questioning. It's not about a culture of interrogation, not about a culture of critical inquiry. It's just the opposite. Sixth, in an age when educators are being censored, fired, and in some cases subject to criminal penalties, it's crucial to fight again. It's crucial for them to fight to gain control over the conditions of their labor. Without power, faculty are reduced to a casual labor force. They play no role, or a very limited role, in the governing process and work under labor conditions comparable to how workers are treated at Amazon and Walmart. Educators need a new vision, a language, and collective strategy in order to regain the power, rightful influence, control, and security over their work conditions and their ability to make meaningful contributions to their students in the larger society. I think one of the great failures of American progressives and the American left is to have allowed this casualization of labor to take place in the United States to the degree where 70% of all faculty now or on casualized labor, with very little security, absolutely terrified about saying anything that might get them fired, no security, and lack the ability to basically have a job in which they.
So one of the things that Henry is pissed off about the most is that faculty don't have tenure and can get fired from their jobs. And he's pissed off that the American progressives allowed that to happen. He's talking about non-tenured faculty. He's pissed that faculty can get fired. That's what he's saying.
They can both be imaginative and live with dignity. Finally, I want to suggest that in a society in which democracy is under siege, it's crucial for educators to remember that alternative futures are possible and that acting on these beliefs is a precondition for making social change possible. At stake here is the courage to take on the challenge of what kind of world we want. What kind of future do we want to build for our children and for all children? The great philosopher Ernst Bloch insisted that hope taps into our deepest experiences, and without it, reason and justice cannot blossom. In The Fire Next Time, James Baldwin adds a call for compassion and social responsibility to this notion of hope, one that is indicated to those, one that is indebted to those who follow us. He writes, generations did not cease to be born, and we're responsible to them. The moment we break faith with one another, the sea engulfs us and the lights go out. Now more than ever, educators must live up to the challenge of keeping the fires of resistance burning with a feverish intensity. Only then will we be able to keep the lights on and the future open. In addition to this eloquent appeal, I would say that history is open and it's time to think differently in order to act differently, especially if, as educators, if we want to imagine and fight for alternative democratic futures and build new horizons of possibility. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Giroux. I know I've taken like 3 pages of notes. It has got me fired up and super inspired. Everyone, my name is Simone Gibson. I'm an associate professor here at Morgan in the Department of Teacher Education, and I will be serving as discussant for the concluding portion of our talk with Dr. Giroux. If you are interested in asking a question, I ask that you kindly pose your question in the chat, and I'll call on you as time permits, first come, first serve. And if we can start questions with Dr. Ben Welsh.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were going to read it. Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Giroux. I really appreciate your words. They are inspiring. At the same time, I'm sitting here looking at a tattered copy of Kinchelo's, what I consider to be brilliant manifesto toward a critical politics of teacher thinking. It went out of print. I begged the publisher to bring it back. They brought it back partially as an on-demand volume. I got the copy that I have that's in tatters from an old pro-labor lefty, Richard Brozio. Now it's 2023. Kincheloe has passed away, Brozio has passed away, and we are not getting any younger. What are your thoughts about passing the baton to the future generations? I fear for the future of critical pedagogy. I can't help it. I mean, I watched, the philosophy of education departments evaporate. Even in my short 20 years in higher ed, I watched the number of publications diminish. I don't even know if there's a special interest group. I don't know what happened to AESA. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on the future of critical pedagogy as a movement.
I have to. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. I thought I was muted. I have to say that I'm much less pessimistic than you are, Ben. I'm in touch with people all over the world who basically, in the face of this assault on public and higher education,
wait, James Lindsay Stan update. The James Lindsay Stan that keeps replying to me in my comments could actually just come into our stream and learn about Henry Giroux, who James has grounded a lot of his work around Henry Giroux. So you would think that the James Lindsay stan that is just blowing up my comments with his salty, salty tears over me saying that I know more about Abolish the Family than James Lindsay, you would think that he would want to come and hear from Henry Giroux himself, but no. James's audience doesn't want to do that. James's audience only wants to hear from James. They don't actually want to hear from any of the people that James is talking about. They only want to hear from James. So when we last left off, the James Lindsay stan was watched a video about gender performativity on my page and completely misunderstood what it meant. And I said, how funny, because that's not what that video is about, which leads me to understand that you're far too stupid to follow the content on my channel. Don't worry, James loves stupid people in his audience. You'll fit in much better there. I mean, sometimes it's just a matter of like, I'm not the best fit for everyone. You need to have an IQ of at least a 100 to follow my content. I know this. I don't joke. I'm actually serious when I say that. Stupid people don't do well here. They cry too much. They get frustrated. They get disruptive, all this stuff. You send those people right over to James Lindsay. They fit in just fine. Here, it doesn't work. So I pointed that out. And then the James Lindsay stan responded, you talk about it being linked to Marxism. James does that. Good job. Must feel good exposing the woke Red Guard when James literally calls them the Maoist Red Guard and makes comparisons to the Cultural Revolution. Stay mad. That is the extent of the understanding that the James Lindsay stans have of what I'm doing. They seriously think I'm just sitting here copying James Lindsay because they don't bother to look at what actually is going on. And they just think that I'm willy-nilly comparing everything to Marxism when we're watching self-professed Marxists every day. So again, like this, I really should do like the very first, if I end up doing this thing where I end up like doing entire streams criticizing conservative influencers, James Lindsay is going to be the first on the list, because like the experience that I've had in like the past week or so from publicly criticizing James Lindsay has been that his audience is revealing to me just how stupid and uninformed they are. And I think if I did like a whole video criticizing James Lindsay, I would get more of his audience revealing how stupid and uninformed they are, which is really disappointing to me if I'm honest about it, because again, I covered for him for years. I every time someone came to me to complain about James, I covered for him for years because I really did believe in him. But if this is the level that his audience has, if this is the highest state of James Lindsay's audience, that's really, James, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed, bro. I'm just disappointed.
Critical pedagogy in some fundamental way, both in terms of people who initially wrote about this stuff and pioneered it from a whole range of places, to a younger generation of people who are advancing that work and building on it. I think it's impossible now not to talk about education, given the cultural apparatuses that now engage in utterly repressive forms of education, and given the fact that policies are constantly being churned out, particularly in the red states in the United States, and of course in Hungary and in other places, that make education central to really a kind of dominating and repressive ethos. So in some ways, what they've done is they've given new life to critical pedagogy as an antidote in some ways to being able to challenge this stuff and to see schools as profoundly important sites of critical struggle. I mean, it's funny, I worked with Paulo Freire, I worked with giants, Sigmund Bauman, Stanley Aronowitz, I've worked with Robin Kelly, and in all of that work, education is central. And I think younger generations is grasping that in a way in which I've never seen before, with an enthusiasm, with a sense of energy, a sense of dynamism. My biggest concern is that the public intellectuals, the people who are embracing this the most, in some ways, are not talking to each other. I mean,
In some ways.
the people in higher education are not talking to the new public intellectuals, the
In all
journalists,
ways.
the people who basically are being fired, who are on the front lines, who are writing about this stuff. And I think that's a problem. But I don't think it's fading away. I think schools are under attack that try to promote it. But I think the issue is, I think the ongoing movement of critical pedagogy is larger than the institutions that are trying to repress it.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dr. Welsh. I'd also now like to call on, please forgive me if I'm saying your name wrong, please correct me, Raul Kumar.
Yes. Dr. Giroux, thank you very much for your inspirational talk. As always, it's a treat to listen. You mentioned that hope is wounded but not lost. It seems
I'm
as though
surprised
it's
Henry
in
hasn't said
ICU,
capitalism yet.
sometimes. And you also mentioned about the culture, that we need to create culture rather than critique it. How do we go about creating culture when our minds have already been dulled and numbed?
That's a good question, Henry.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Did you finish? I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, I don't think all of our minds have been dulled. I hope not, especially the group here. I think that certainly we live at a time when there's an enormous attempt to shut down critical faculties in every institution. But at the same time, there's also a lot of people who are fighting back. And there are a lot of people who basically are not relying on mainstream media to basically get the information they need, which it seems to me is more distorting than ever. Just to put up Trump endlessly and allow him to, blab about, elections being lost. And
Henry Giroux is under the impression that the mainstream media is playing Trump endlessly, and that Trump is going on the mainstream media to blather on about elections being stolen. Is that grounded in reality at all? Henry. That's just not true, Henry. Come on.
To lie endlessly and to, display his bigotry over and over again so as to normalize it. I think that's losing in some ways its credibility, particularly for people who still believe that thinking matters. I think the great problem here is the refusal on the part of many progressives in the left to really take education seriously. I mean, I think there are too many people who think that education is only about schooling and not about, as C. Wright Mills talked about, those larger cultural apparatuses that are enormously powerful in shaping popular information and using persuasion and lies to basically blunt the kind of cultural questioning and the movements that need to rely on that information to organize and be profoundly significant. But at the same time, I mean, I think that when you look at what's happening with the fight against the attempt to deny women's reproductive rights, when you look at questions of gun violence, when you look at the questions of the erosion of the climate, when you look at all the major issues that basically are facing the United States, and in some ways are facing other countries, the systemic racism, these are all so visible today. They're so unapologetic in their attempts to, to sort of take pride in this nonsense, this absolutely fascist politics, that it's difficult not to take a position. It's difficult to be silent and not to be, while recognizing that you're also being complicitous. And so I think in this sense, I don't share the notion that there isn't an active attempt to rewrite these narratives and to fight against this culture of oppression, while at the same time recognizing how powerful these cultures, these massive cultural apparatuses are. And of course, as you know, that leads to another question, right? And the other question is, how do we talk about capitalism? How do we talk about it? I mean,
I was wondering when Henry was going to say capitalism. Thank you, Henry. Thank you. We love you, Henry. Thank you. Winner, chicken dinner, Henry. Henry came through for us after all. Bingo, 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 bingo. Let's rewind and listen to Henry's full thoughts about capitalism.
to rewrite these narratives and to fight against this culture of oppression, while at the same time recognizing how powerful these cultures, these massive cultural apparatuses are. And of course, as you know, that leads to another question, right? And the other question is, how do we talk about capitalism? How do we talk about it? I mean, that's the elephant in the room. You want to talk about inequality, you got to talk about capitalism. You want to talk about massive injustices in domestic and foreign policy? You want to talk about institutions that basically are backed by billionaires that legitimize systemic racism? You want to talk about an economy that's collapsed in some ways because it can no longer deliver the promises about social mobility and all that nonsense that it once provided? You got to talk about capitalism. You got to talk about neoliberalism. You got to talk about a capitalism that's reached its endpoint and now basically relies on fascist arguments, blaming blacks, blaming immigrants, blaming gays, for the problems that the society faces. It's fell apart. It's falling apart. And the only
Henry has just confirmed that fascism and capitalism mean the same thing. So Henry, what you're saying is that when Trump says the institutions are owned by Marxists, he's right. That's what we're talking about, right, Henry? Henry's like, oh my God, all these feelings are coming out about capitalism. Let's listen to that one more time. All these feelings coming out about capitalism, Henry. Henry has not been this passionate about anything else he's said in this entire talk.
An active attempt to rewrite these narratives and to fight against this culture of oppression, while at the same time
recognizing like once you break the cherry, it's just like
these cultures, these massive cultural apparatuses are. And of course, as you know, that leads to another question, right? And the other question is, how do we talk about capitalism? How do we talk about it? I mean, that's the elephant in the room. You want to talk about inequality? You got to talk about capitalism. You want to talk about massive injustices in domestic and foreign policy? You want to talk about institutions that basically are backed by billionaires that legitimize systemic racism? You want to talk about an economy that's collapsed in some ways because it can no longer deliver the promises about social mobility and all that nonsense that it once provided? You got to talk about capitalism. You got to talk about neoliberalism. You got to talk about a capitalism that's reached its endpoint and now basically relies on fascist arguments, blaming blacks, blaming immigrants, blaming gays, for the problems that the society faces. It's fell apart. It's falling apart. And the only thing left is the symbol of authoritarianism. And I think in that way, more and more people are waking up to the nightmare that basically cannot in any way constitute what the future might look like.
Thank you.
So Henry is saying that he wants to use education in order to abolish capitalism because capitalism is the great evil in the world. Yes. Great rant, Henry. Great rant. We know we can always rely on you to say the quiet part out loud. This is why we love you, Henry. This is why we appreciate you. This is why you were at one time one of my internet boyfriends. This is it right here. Moaning in capitalism. Yeah. Yep. True. I am scary accurate. That's what comes from actually listening to people. Wouldn't you know it? I marked it for a clip, guys. Don't worry. I marked it.
Thanks so much for that. I think we have time for possibly one more question. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Corinne Noli.
Oh, wait.
Hello.
Lindsay, stand update. Hang on. This might be the last Lindsay stand update of the stream because I'm getting really tired of this retard being in my replies and I'm just going to block him. But I replied to the Lindsay stan. I replied that if you think that's what so the Lindsay stan basically said that all I'm doing is calling people Marxists. And I said, if you think that's what I'm doing, you're even more retarded than I first assessed. Again, I'm very sorry you're not smart enough to follow here. James will take care of you well, though. And the Lindsay stan replied, you seem hurt. Sorry if I bruised your fragile ego. Yep. That's definitely what happened, Lindsay stan. Yeah. Uh-huh. Totes. I'm going to block him now, though, because he's now annoying.
evening. And thank you, Dr. Giroux, for your presentation. There were a lot of great points, and I was just thinking about how we can bring awareness to these issues. It seemed like most of us as faculty are aware of the issues that are going on, but our students lack interest, or if they do have interest, it may be at a surface level. So how can we bring more awareness to our students on the issues that are impacting them, their education, and even their careers in the future?
I think in some ways, one of the things that I worry about with students that is not their fault is that they're often rendered voiceless in terms of what their experiences are, how they see themselves in relationship to the larger society. They often operate in common sense assumptions that it seems to me we as educators have a responsibility to challenge. We have a responsibility in some fundamental way to arouse a sense of curiosity and interest in which we can link what we talk about to basically what their lives are all about. And I think this speaks to the question.
You can't make this shit up. You can't make this shit up. Someone just tagged me on Twitter because apparently earlier today, James Lindsay tweeted, "Whiteness is bourgeois values in a new package so it doesn't look explicitly communist." You cannot make this shit up. James Lindsay, whiteness is bourgeois values in a new package so it doesn't look explicitly communist. What is James Lindsay trying to say when he says that? What is James Lindsay saying when he says that whiteness is bourgeois values? So, James, what you're saying is whiteness means capitalism? Is that what you're saying, James? So you're saying that whiteness means capitalism, James? Because as you know, James, bourgeois values means capitalism, which means private property ownership. So James, you're maybe saying a little late to the party here. Maybe, I know that you watch my content secretly, James, because every once in a while you do stuff like this where it suddenly sounds, James, like you're saying whiteness is capitalism. Is that what you mean, James? By bourgeois values, do you mean capitalism? I mean, James, you could just say capitalism. You could just admit that I was right for the years that I've been saying this and say that whiteness means capitalism, because that's what bourgeois values means, James. He's saying whiteness means capitalism, whiteness means capitalism, whiteness means capitalism. Can everyone watching this right now that is not blocked by James Lindsay go and reply to him and say, "So James, you're saying that Carlin was right when she said whiteness means capitalism?" And please make sure you tag me in it so that I can see it. Can you all just reply to James right now if you're not blocked by him and say, "So James," because he tweeted this at what was this? 12:41 p.m. So he tweeted it not that long ago today. Go reply to him and say, "So James, what you're saying is that Dr. Carlin B was right when she's been screaming for years that whiteness means capitalism." Is that what you're saying, James? James, we even have a t-shirt that says whiteness means capitalism, bro. We even have a t-shirt here. I'll show you real quick. We even have a t-shirt that says whiteness means capitalism. If you go to my Unwoke art store and you look up whiteness means capitalism, we even have a shirt, James. You can get it in pink, you can get it in black, you can get it in gray, you can get it in navy, you can get it in purple, you can get it in blue. I prefer the black one. We have merchandise for this, James. But we're really, really glad that you finally caught up, James. Tate, can you reply specifically saying, "So you're saying Carlin was right when she said whiteness means capitalism"? I mean, you can reply to him more than once. It's okay. You can. Yeah. All right, we got to go back to Daddy Henry. We've got 12 more minutes. Well, I can't link the tweet because, of course, I'm blocked by James Lindsay on Twitter. The only time I see James Lindsay tweets on Twitter is when people tag me in those tweets. So I can't link to it directly. That would be violating Twitter's terms of service. And I definitely don't have sock accounts where I can look at this stuff because that would not be kosher. But, oh, Bot, you found it? Bot found it, though. Maybe Bot can put the link in the chat to the tweet so everyone on Twitter, and it doesn't matter if you only have 2 followers on Twitter, doesn't matter. Go reply to James Lindsay, and what I want you to say is, so James, what you're saying is that Dr. Carlin B was right when she said whiteness means capitalism. That's what I want you to say. You can wordsmith that. Like, obviously, like, it probably is, like, not the best. I mean, I'm going to release this video as a clip, so, I mean, he's going to know where it came from. But, like, James is going to know where it fucking came from. But if you want to wordsmith it, you can be ninja artist. You can be, you live your best life, girl. Be as sassy as you want to be. Be as belligerent as you want to be. Nick has already done it. Here's the link. Bot put it in the chat. While you guys are reply guying to James Lindsay, let's watch the rest of James Lindsay's hero, Henry Giroux. And by the way, Henry has not mentioned anything related to the family or the problem of reproduction, James, which you promised us. You said that if we listen to Henry, and we've listened to Henry on more than one occasion now, like you said that the way you've addressed the problem of reproduction is that Daddy Henry has been talking about the problem of reproduction. He ain't talking about the problem of reproduction in this video, James. In fact, I looked for videos of Daddy Henry talking about the problem of reproduction, and I couldn't find any. Kind of seems like Daddy Henry might not be the problem, Daddy Lindsay. I mean, everyone can be daddy, really, I guess. Daddy has now become both a term of scorn and a term of endearment at the same time. Isn't that funny? Henry Giroux is only focused on the problem of social reproduction through education, not the family at all. That's exactly right. That's it. Holy shit, Rottweiler, I didn't even think of this. James Lindsay thinks that the social system that they're trying to disrupt in order to disrupt the social reproduction of capitalism is education. Holy, I didn't even think of that. So are we saying that James Lindsay doesn't even know that they believe that the nuclear family is the means of production of capitalism? I'm being serious now. I was joking before, but like, do we think that James Lindsay understands that the nuclear family is the means of production of capitalism according to the left? Yo! If James Lindsay doesn't fucking understand that the nuclear family is the means of production of capitalism and it's not the schools that are reproducing capitalism, it's the nuclear family that's reproducing capitalism. I am so disillusioned with life right now. Truly and sincerely. How is it possible that James Lindsay doesn't know that the nuclear family is the means of production of capitalism according to the left? How did this fucking happen? I have never once heard James Lindsay mention the nuclear family in that holy shit. It really never occurred to me that this would be the case. All idols have clay feet, guys. All idols have clay feet. Wow. He doesn't understand that the nuclear family is the means of production of capitalism. Oh my God. We have literally watched over 100 hours of specifically abolish the family content. How is it possible that James Lindsay missed this? Possibly because he was dicking around with Moms for Liberty and not fucking paying attention. Oh my God. Whatever. I am now the queen of this fucking space, and I don't care if James Lindsay has more followers than me, and I don't care if James Lindsay has a bigger platform than me. I am way ahead. If James Lindsay does not understand this, then I'm fucking way ahead of him. And this is proof. Yep. Too busy dicking around with his big sword, which I don't begrudge him. I like his sword. I think his sword is great. We just lapped him again. All right. Let's put that aside right now. Yep, I'm now the queen of this space. And if anyone wants to... James, if you want to debate me on social reproduction theory and abolishing the nuclear family, I'll do it anytime, bro. And if you don't come and debate me, then you're a fucking coward. I cannot believe that he does not understand this. That's the stupid part. Both family and education reproduce culture. James Lindsay has a massive blind spot because education is where the MILFs are more invested in. How many people are going to lose their kids because James Lindsay never bothered to explain to them where the attacks on parental rights are coming from? Because it ain't all education. It's just not. How many people... Listen, people might think that this beef I have with him is just like me being petty. It's not. How many people are going to lose their kids because James Lindsay never bothered to be responsible and inform his fucking audience where the attacks on parental rights are coming from? And he openly shit on the only person that's covering this on the internet. It is mind-boggling to me that I'm in this position. It really is. I never intended this to happen. This was not what I set out to do. It just happened. Because we watched so much of their training, it just happened. Oh my God. All right. Let's finish up. We will see if Daddy Henry has anything more to say about capitalism in the last 15 minutes of this presentation.
Context. Who are the students? Where do they come from? What do they believe in? You know, how do we inhabit a language that they use that basically we often view as vastly inferior or unsuited to academic discourse? How do we talk about the social media?
Whoa!
You know, how do we talk about how they view the future?
Tolkien fan! Thank you, Tolkien fan. I really appreciate it. Tolkien fan says, this is why I watch your videos and read up on your Substack. I don't always get a chance to watch your live streams as they happen, but I make time to catch up on them. You're way ahead on this subject than anyone else. Thank you. Tolkien fan. Seriously. I really appreciate it. And I don't just appreciate the money, although I do appreciate the money. I'm gonna buy some beer with that money. I appreciate you, or possibly some weed or something else debaucherous. But I really appreciate the sentiment more than anything else because I have put myself through hell and back doing this, and I never thought, like, I didn't realize that in the process of doing this, I was getting this far ahead of people. I just didn't realize it. And now I'm starting to, and I think it actually does matter. And it's a little overwhelming. Yeah, I'll dedicate to this. I'll get us a good spy stream with this money. Thank you, Tolkien fan. I appreciate you.
And what I often do is in my classrooms, I make sure students write short papers. I make sure they talk about those papers with the rest of the class, and I make sure they're able to defend those papers. And I find that where those classes go in the beginning, when they start narrating themselves, to where they end up, honestly, is amazing. I'm always shocked at the progression, how much more self-critical they become, what it means for them to be able to talk about their lives in relation to larger social issues that they often don't get the chance to address with adults and others. Now, the other side of this, and forgive me, is look, we all operate under, at the same time, tremendous constraints around workloads, around fear, around, students who initially might seem as if they're not interested. And I think that I don't think we can face these challenges alone. This is not about, addressing a pedagogy and asking ourselves, what works? What can I do?
Whoa! Dayton! Dayton, not to be outdone. She's put us all in a position of power, and I'm getting notifications of all the tweets, guys. Your tweets are glorious. Thank you. Thank you. Oh my God. This is making me so happy. All I want in life, literally I'm retweeting all of you right now. Like literally all I want in life is to create a reply guy gang on Twitter where every time someone mentions anything related to like race at all in this context, I want an army of people in their replies going, whiteness means capitalism, whiteness means capitalism, whiteness means capitalism. Every single time you see something, whiteness means capitalism. That's okay. You can delete it. I can retweet it. Thank you, Tayton. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Educators to have the space and the power to be able to determine in some way the labor conditions under which they're operating. We have lost that power. We have lost it. What's happening in higher education is that more administrators are being hired than faculty. And more administrators mean more staff. And more staff means further staff, right? So that all of a sudden you have these buildings filled with administrators, as David Graeber once said, who have what we call bullshit jobs, right? To use his phrase, bullshit jobs, right? Looking for something to do. And so they send us memos in which they say, we need a new report now, an annual report for the year. And this may take you 2 or 3 days, but don't worry. I'm exaggerating, but I think you understand what I'm saying. As Adorno once said, in the exaggerations, there are truths. And somehow that imbalance of power in our fields has got to change. Or we're done. We're done. We will be like Walmart workers, and that's how we'll be treated. There are some universities now that literally hire outside business contractors to hire faculty. They don't even interview them. Think about it, But anyways, I hope that answers part of the question. I'm willing to answer more questions. I know you're out of time, but I don't want to shortchange you. You want to go for 2 more?
Henry's like, we're not letting capitalism get in our way.
No, yeah, I'm good. No, of course. I'm here for
Henry's
you.
I'm not here to simply. Henry's like, we're not letting the white supremacist concept of time get in our way of answering questions about the future of democracy.
To give a lecture.
Okay, sounds good. So if we can take maybe 2 more questions, I'm going to now shift to Dr. Utan Ghali.
Thank you, Dr. Gibson. It's really a momentous occasion here. I would like to thank our friend, Dr. Mohammed Saifuddin, for bringing our friend, Dr. Giroux, to Morgan. As Dr. Prime and Dr. Bridges highlighted, we can't overstate how central education to democracy is. And I agree with Dr. Wells that we need more of Dr. Giroux. I'm also worried about the legacy. We can see, right in front of our eyes, the deterioration of democratic institutions. And we as educators are watching, and we have the responsibility on our shoulders to educate and create an informed citizenry. So, and we also see the innocent people being hoodwinked into extreme opinions and what you could call the different cults emerging. So at the same time, as you have already mentioned, Dr. Giroux, our speech is also being like subdued more and more. So what can we do differently as educators, as the educators community? Because we look up to you as public intellectuals, and we are trying our best, but it looks like to do something really different.
No, I don't think. No, I think we should. I think we should learn from each other rather than look to anybody. We should learn from each other. That's what we should do. But I will say this in light of your question, which I think is extremely important. We have got to learn to speak to people, not just simply in our field, but the people outside of the universities. We've got to write op-eds. We've got to function as intellectuals that make a connection with others. We've got to be able to write in a way in which people can recognize themselves and recognize the conditions under which they find themselves, and be able to, in some way, be critical of those conditions and to move on to something that might energize them and provide the conditions for them to be more active and aware of the world in which they live. This is crucial to me. You know, I mean,
Thank
look,
you, Jeff.
you
It's
know,
just a
people often
gloss.
say, would you write a
Just a
chapter in a book?
gloss.
You know, a chapter in a book, edited book, you know, in
People
5
rag
years,
on me
5
for
people
chap
will read it.
lips, so
You know, just look at the information on this stuff. You know, you write an op-ed for a newspaper here in Hamilton, Ohio, 500,000 people potentially read it. I mean, we really need to begin to understand what it means to be able to speak to people who are not in education, so that they can understand the value of education and what we do. Right? I don't consider myself a scholar. I consider myself an intellectual. And I think that's different, as Stuart Hall might say, you know, meaning you're speaking to multiple audiences in ways that are rigorous and insightful. And you're working with others in social movements to build a culture in which education is not seen as a detriment, or as Trump and his mega idiots might say, you know, just simply, you know, outposts of socialism. I wish there were, but you know, something else, right? Vital to a democracy. We occupy a space that right now, in my mind, is one of the few spaces left in which democracy can be saved. That's how important we are. One of the few. That's why the war is being waged so intensely on what we do. That's how you have to understand that war. That war is in direct proportion to our significance and the threat that we offer. We have to recognize that and find ways to educate people outside of what we do. For instance, the Moms for Liberty, you know, this fascist group that is just banning books everywhere. How do we fight this group? How do we educate people? What does it mean to educate people to join local councils, school boards, become election officials in ways that are able to recognize the stakes are so high that we're all vital players in this role of trying to save a democracy that is on the verge in 2024 of being utterly distinguished.
I saw Kristen.
Not just temporarily, utterly.
Thank you.
I mean, I can't tell you as an educator how dangerous I think this moment is. I don't think we have a lot of time left. And I think that in the sense of that urgency, we need a new language. We need a new sense of social responsibility, invigorated sense. We need to join with other groups. We need mass movements, but we have to educate people about the value of education as a public good, as central to democracy.
Thank you so much. And we'll take our last question. Is going to come from, and please forgive me if I say your name incorrectly, please correct me. Katayun Beshkardana. Katayun Beshkardana.
Katayun is good. Thank you very much.
I apologize.
No worries at all. Dr. Giroux, thank you very much for your talk today. My question goes to the fact that, okay, what is the role of education? When we are talking about this critical thinking, when we are talking about classroom debates, encouraging students to engage in the debate, we are pursuing a goal. We have a goal to find, exactly as you mentioned, what ought to be. We don't want to talk about a status quo. We don't want to say what is the reality. We want to probably we are searching for the answer to somehow solve the problems of social matters, from social matters to environment to everything else. How do we deal in this current moment with a situation that conflicting parties, when they're engaging in these debates, they do not share any common values? We have lost that common ground rules. One time it was easy to say, all of us, democracy happens actually when we have some of those ground rules. We have no doubt that everybody is equal. But how do we place, when we are engaging in a debate with somebody who doesn't believe in science of climate change, for example, when they are denying altogether, how we can even enter into a constructive debate? Because what we are searching here is to finally, we are not debating for the sake of debate. We are debating to reach to a solution, to find some solutions for social causes and problems. How do we deal that? How we can moderate such situation, that how we can bring people back to those common ground rules, that we all believe that any constructive debate can only be constructed upon those rules.
I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced that's the place to begin. I'm not convinced that the place to begin is how do we expand the possibility of dialogue. I think the place to begin, first of all, is to be able to define what the mission of education is in the first place. I think that's where we begin. I think we need to talk about education being crucial to democracy and what it means. Because if we don't begin there, then what follows it often gets caught up in questions of decorum, questions of collegiality, questions of addressing particular kinds of audiences. So that's the first issue. The second issue for me is that I'm not convinced that we need to spend a lot of time talking to the most hardcore elements of denialism. You know, people who really believe in a fascist state, for instance, right? I mean, it's not a question of convincing, they're already convinced. I mean, then there's a middle ground. You know, there are people who are confused. There are people who are not sure basically what the arguments are. There are people who are trapped in common sense assumptions. In that sense, we have to find a way to talk to them. And we have to talk to them in a language that fundamentally resonates with the problems and the confusions that we have. And I think there's been an enormous disregard for what I call a politics of identification. And that means that how people identify themselves in this terrain has to be understood less as a way to simply disparage them. And I'm not talking of the far right extremists. I don't care about them. I think they're done. I don't want to waste my time talking to neo-Nazis, to be honest, right?
Henry,
but I do want to spend a lot of time talking to people somehow who are not frozen in those moments for which there are questions of doubt, questions of uncertainty, questions that need explanation. They're the people we need to talk to. And I think talking to them demands a new understanding of what the language might look like that we actually use. A language that isn't mirrored in jargon, a language that actually has some concern about what their problems are and how to inhabit that language so that they can recognize what we're saying in ways that do open a dialogue.
Exactly. Don't knock until you tried it, Henry. Don't knock the neo-Nazis until you tried it.
Thanks so much, Dr. Giroux. At this point, we're going to conclude the question and answer component of our discussion, and I'm going to turn it over back to Dr. Udine for closing remarks.
All right. I don't want
so very much.
I don't want to listen to Dr. Udine because I don't understand Dr. Udine's accent, but I do want to say, Henry, thank you for that amazing quote about capitalism being the cause of all the world's problems. We appreciate you, Henry. I knew you couldn't get through a single talk without referencing capitalism once. Jeff, in with the last minute super chat. Thank you so much, Jeff. It's good to see you. I'm sorry, I just don't see how they don't win in the end. It's like, who's going to win when you pit a group that finds identity in the collective versus a group that finds identity in the individual? Oh, they're 100% gonna win. We're totally and completely fucked. Everyone should really, like, I don't want to black pill anyone, but like, we're fucked, like, epically and completely. And there is freedom in realizing just how fucked we are, because it's like, yeah, first off, everyone needs to go buy guns. That's a really, really good idea. That's a really good idea. But listen, if the world is going to descend, or at least the United States is going to descend into a Marxist utopia within the next 20, 30 years or so, what is stopping any of you from going after what you want? What is stopping any of you from giving up this idea that the world is a place of shoulds and just doing what you want and what makes you feel good? I'm not saying you should go out and like go on a murder spree or anything. I don't co-sign that. But like, what is stopping you from going after your dream now? Because you might not have the opportunity to in a couple of years. You might not have the opportunity to in 10, 15 years because of all this bullshit. And no one is fighting back in any way. And James Lindsay doesn't even know what the fuck is going on, which is still something I'm reeling about and haven't quite wrapped my head around yet, which means no one knows what's going on. Of course I have a gun. I'm not dumb. If the world is effed anyway, you might as well do what you want to do and show up how you want to show up and be who you want to be and forget all of these societal expectations, forget all the fucking moral policing, forget all the outrage junkies, like just be you and do what you want to do and do what makes you happy and like, you know, find people that make you feel good, find people that lift you up, find people, dare I say, that love you for who you are and don't worry so much about all the social norms because all that's bullshit anyway. There's freedom and understanding that we are totally and completely fucked. It opens up a world. If the world is going to hell anyway, then are you going to sit around and be miserable, or are you going to like grab the bull by the horns and say, this is what I want to do today, mother effers, and I don't really care how you think about it. I don't really care what you think, and I don't care if you agree, and I don't care if you don't like my haircut. I don't care if you don't like my weight. I don't care if you don't like how I look. I don't care if you don't like the videos I make on the internet. I don't care if you don't like the things I say on Twitter. I don't care if you don't like the job that I'm doing for myself. I don't care. I don't care if you don't like who my friends are. I don't care if you don't like what my opinions are. I don't care if you don't like what my spiritual beliefs are. I don't care. You know, I'm not saying that we all need to like be moping around like, oh, we're losers who are never really losing or anything. We shouldn't be doing that. Because why? Why would you spend your life moping around? If you have a limited time here, you may as well use it. Yep. Well, we could all move to Argentina. That is a possibility. We'd all have to learn how to speak Spanish though, and I don't really want to learn how to speak Spanish. Anyway, guys, that is all we have for today. Now, tomorrow we will be doing Bitchcraft, which is an open Zoom where we bitch and we craft. And we're going to be doing that at 3 p.m. And the way that you are going to get access to it is by heading to this email right here. And if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of this email, for supporters, underneath this red box, you will find a Zoom link. That Zoom link will take you to Bitchcraft. And you can show up with any craft you want. I, of course, will be knitting as the far most superior of all crafts, but you can draw, you can paint, you can clean your gun, you can fold your laundry, you can quilt, you can sew, you can even crochet if you want to. I don't know why anyone would, but you can. You can just come hang out with us if you want. We will be doing Bitchcraft from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. And then, of course, 6 p.m. is Socialism Saturday. And then on Sunday, we are doing movie night in the supporter Discord. I think Jennifer had a poll up for movie night. It's going to be some sort of love-related movie. I hope we're watching Down with Love because it has Ewan McGregor in it, and he's really hot. And it's also a great and funny movie. But another movie might win too. It doesn't really matter. We do movie night every Sunday in the supporter Discord. How you get access to all of these perks is by heading over to my Substack, which is Carlyn, KARLYN.substack.com. And sign up as a supporter for $8 a month or $80 a year. I really do appreciate it. And guys, as a reminder, and I'm serious about this homework. I'm serious. This weekend, if you're going to come to this Adam Green interview that I'm going to do on Wednesday, watch some of Adam Green's content over the weekend. If you haven't heard of him and you don't know what he's talking about, I promise you, this interview is going to be a lot more interesting for every single person involved if you guys do some homework and you watch some of his content. Now, I have put in the description of this video, I put a link to a playlist that he sent me. And some videos on this playlist are 10 minutes long. Some videos on this playlist are 2 hours long. You get to be the judge of how much of his content you consume, You don't even need to do anything. You don't need to watch his content if you don't want to, but I promise you that I think that this interview is going to go a whole lot better for everyone if you do some homework and you watch some of his content and you think about some of his ideas. And I'm not saying you have to agree with his ideas. And in fact, some of you might hate me for even platforming his ideas, but I think they're interesting and I want to talk about them. And so go do some homework, watch some of his videos this weekend. And Adam Green is coming on the channel on Wednesday to talk about his ideas, and it's going to be great. Yeah, you can come. I mean, I don't think he like. I don't. If you want to. So if everyone is welcome to come, including Christians. I don't exclude Christians, even though I don't agree with you guys. But like whatever. But his playlist is on his channel on Odyssey, and it's called the Christianity Deception Playlist. And I put a link to it in the description of this video, and that's it. And now I'm going to go and drink another beer and go spend some time with my husband. And I appreciate all of you. Thank you, Raven's Poetry. Guys, that is all we have for tonight. Take care, and we'll see you guys soon.